It's been said before, and I'll say it again. Nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills. So where would you rather be than right here and right now on the Ralph Rant? Let's go.
Welcome to the Ralph Rant, your source for hard-hitting Buffalo Bills takes. Now, here's your host of the Ralph Rant, that veteran watcher of generations of Bills teams, the prophet who predicted Josh Allen's greatness, that opinionated so-and-so you've walked out on parties because of, the Ralph.
Good evening, it's the Wednesday Night Attitude, and welcome to the Ralph Rant, Wednesday Night Attitude Show. Got a special guest coming on a little bit later tonight, not too distant future. That's going to be a lot of fun. That will be John Green, writer for Bills SI. John and I have gotten together and talked quite a bit about doing a show together, and we finally got it together for tonight. He's going to be joining me in a little bit here, and I think we've got our music repeating there. Boy, you can tell how long it's been since I've done a live show. But anyway, guys, here's to you. Good to have you in the house tonight. Let's see what we got for comments so far and who is with us. Oh, yeah, Pez, 79 in the house, and we see the numbers are building up. So welcome in. Of course, we've got preseason game number 3 tomorrow night with the Bills hosting the Pittsburgh Steelers. We'll see, I'm sure, Kyle Allen starting at quarterback for the Bills. You can see I've got his number 11 jersey right here. And looking forward to that. Got some cool things to talk about coming up on the show. Arthur Moats will be back on with us at some point here, I believe, before the season starts, and we're going to discuss what he feels about the Bills in terms of what they are looking like and coming together as for this season. And then, actually, I've also just found out today, I've got a guest coming on that you guys are going to love. And he's an author. He wrote the book Collision Low Crossers. If you're not familiar with it, I'll get into what that is and who he is a little bit later in the show, but I'm looking very much forward to that. And definitely, if you're here in the house, go ahead and hit the like button. I know most of you guys here early on are the regulars, so thank you much for that. But indeed, if you are new to the Ralph Rant, please go ahead and take the nanosecond required to hit that subscribe button, and you will become part of the show. And we've got a lot of stuff planned this season. I can tell you about a few of those things. Our Wednesday night show here that we're going to have as a regular entity here on the Ralph Rant. Regrettably, we missed it last Wednesday night, but that was due to some great stuff going on. But we will be here every Wednesday night live. And then, of course, we've got our game day stuff that we've done last season with our pregame show and a postgame show. Well, adding to it, we're going to be live streaming during the games here, and I'm going to be giving you my call of the game as if I was on the radio. Now, certainly in this day and age of cable and YouTube TV or getting it over the web or however you might be getting your Bills games, we don't watch it all at the same time, obviously, because there's delays from satellite feeds and so forth. So what I will be doing when I'm doing these game calls is actually I'll start off and pause the game for a couple of minutes. So I will actually be behind the real action. And that should enable those of you who want to jump in on the live stream and get the game call to be able to pause if you are watching indeed on a DVR to where you can get synced up with it. And in order to help with that, I will have a game clock right on screen. I will have the score up and let you know what quarter it is in a nicely designed lower third, so it'll look like the network. But we'll be calling the games here and giving our reaction, and that will be starting out with the opener when the Bills travel to what my guest coming up in the show terms as the Bills' House of Horrors. And, of course, that's probably somewhat accurate for how the Bills have fared in Houston. Josh Allen has never won there. I believe things are going to be different this season. Certainly there's a little bit of news going on. There's some offensive line questions with the Houston Texans. And also their receiver, I believe Jalen Higgins, was knocked out for the season, regrettably for him, with a knee injury. So many of you probably know that they made a trade with the New England Patriots and have brought aboard Kayshon Boutte, if that is the correct pronunciation of his name. He actually had a good game against the Bills last season, I believe, especially when it was that Game 4 debacle with the rivalry uniforms at the Ralph. But I think that game is history and the stadium is destroyed. So the Bills will be down there, though, and Boutte will be part of the Houston Texans for that game, and we'll see how that goes. I think I've given you, many of you, my opinion on the fact that I think that what happens to a team in the postseason, and especially how a team exits the playoffs, and especially when I mean especially, I'm talking about when a team really gets boat raced. And that actually was the case with the Texans. C.J. Stroud was abominable, and we've not really seen a great version of Stroud yet. And I'm anticipating that the new Bills defense is going to give him some things that he hasn't seen, because no one in the league has seen what the Bills will be doing on defense. None of it is on tape. Yes, the defense is playing, of course, during this preseason, but preseason is not about scheming. It's not about game plans. It's entirely about looking at individual performances. Things are just about as vanilla as it can be, and there are actually a lot of different calls the players have to be involved in a preseason game. When game planning comes along for this first contest down in Houston, we will see a very focused and directed Bills defense, and I'm looking forward to seeing what that looks like. We'll be talking about that a little bit later tonight. And then, of course, I want to just get your opinions on where the Bills are, and we usually kind of hang out and don't get to those until a little bit later in the show. I'm going to hit them a little bit earlier tonight, but I see we've got a few of you in the house now, and if you're here on X, thank you very much. I believe the majority of you are watching on YouTube, so thank you very much for that. And here we go. The Attitude Show. Here's to you guys. It's Wednesday night. Got a fine concoction here that has quite a lime flavor to it and rather enjoyable. So let's get into some of your comments here already. Paz, of course, with Go Bills. Norm, the Bills fan, is with us. Cheers, Ralph. Thank you so very much, Norm. Are they coming up on screen? Oh, there they go. Yeah, that's a longer one. Hit the sub button and like button and share this with your friends. I won't say much tonight, Ralph. Preseason doesn't really mean or do anything for me. I understand, Black Cloud. I think this preseason is a bit different from the standpoint that with a new regime in place, with Joe Brady, head coach, with the new coordinators and largely a new coaching staff, there's guys that are still there from before. Rob Boris, the tight ends coach, of course, remains there. I know that Will Greenberg, I believe, is still the strength and conditioning coach with the Bills. So, but much of it's changed, though. And certainly the attitude, I think, is going to be changed. I think Brady is looking for more of a sideline attitude with more excitement. I think we saw the Bills, for as much good football as they played last season, kind of quiet on the sidelines. Josh would sometimes get that deer in the headlights look, sitting in his one spot on the bench. We never saw a coordinator getting into the face of various position groups, maybe defensive line, something of this nature. I think that is going to be entirely different this season. I think coaching will be really involved. One of the things we'll talk about later tonight also is what we could expect of the coordinators in terms of them being in the booth or down on the field. And I know the Bills have been experimenting with that in the first two preseason games. I believe that Pete Carmichael Jr., offensive coordinator, spent the first game on the sideline, I think in Cleveland. He was up in the booth. I don't know what Jim Leonard did. I think Jim Leonard may have done the same. I have a strong feeling, though, that we're going to end up seeing Leonard on the sideline and perhaps also Pete Carmichael Jr., who really has spent his entire career being on the sideline. And I think you could talk about the advantages and disadvantages. Certainly, one advantage of being up in the booth is being able to see the field and see what's going on. But to that end, I believe in the National Football League, you certainly ought to be able to have guys to be your eyes up in the booth and be seeing what you need them to see and reporting that to you, as opposed to having a situation where you've got guys that can't really tell you what's going on, or guys down on the sideline that perhaps can't see. You need eyes upstairs. But I think you also need to be able to look men in the eye down on the sideline. And especially with the changes that this team is undergoing, and it's not only with the defense, but the offense is going to be somewhat different also. So I think it's important to realize that the coordinators are going to have a bigger impact on game day on the sideline in this scheme and in this Joe Brady coach team. But I think it's also going to be the case as far as the difference we had from what we saw last year and previous seasons with the Bills and Sean McDermott as the head coach, constantly under the headphones, not really speaking to anybody on the sidelines, mostly just communicating through the intercom systems, I suppose, with the coordinators, because both coordinators were up in the booth for the Bills last season, and I believe that was at the behest of Sean McDermott. I don't believe that was due to the fact that they wanted to be there. I think the last offensive coordinator we saw on the sideline was Brian Daboll, and he and Sean McDermott did not get along, to put it rather mildly, and we haven't seen an offensive coordinator on the sideline since then, and a defensive coordinator either, because I think McDermott was kind of stepping on the guys a little bit and keeping them in their place and being rather rigid himself on the sideline, which I mean, you've seen the videos I've done from last year. You know where I ended up standing on Sean McDermott and how the conduct of the sideline actually was. But at any rate, we're going to see those Bills coordinators, at least one on the sideline this season, and I would suspect perhaps both based on what they want to do. And so that will be interesting to see. Let's take a look at a few of the comments here as we get into it. What do we got here? Norm, the Bills fan, again, can't wait for the game calls. Will be great commentary and analysis versus the networks that don't know anything about the Bills. And to that end, I'll explain precisely what I'm going to do. It won't just be a reaction. What I'm going to deliver to you is actually, to the best of my ability, watching a broadcast rather than at the stadium, but to the best of my ability, give you what would be a radio game call. And we're going to do this in the spirit of the dearly departed but well-remembered Van Miller, the original voice of the Buffalo Bills. The Bills, of course, have changed their own radio situation this season. They've really kind of taken it over. WGR is no longer in the picture. It's now WGRZ 97 Rock in Buffalo that will be carrying the games. They will be far more widespread. There will be many more Bills affiliate stations, especially down towards the New York City area, where people that actually do live in New York State and actually want to listen to the call of the game from the only NFL team in New York State. Well, that'll certainly be the case for those. And for that matter, I believe the Bills have also set up, pardon me, still getting over the cold from last week. I guess I'm shouting too loud at the stadium. But I know the Bills will have pregame and postgame festivities now that have changed. Mitch Morse will be involved in those. Looking forward to that. And if you haven't caught his YouTube show. Pretty good. Saw him talking with Joe Brady here, I think, just in the last couple of days. So that will be the game calls. Black Cloud's here. Have a drink for me, Ralph. I have over 11 years of sobriety. Black Cloud, here's to you. I won't recommend that you start again in case things go sour at some point for the Bills this season. Only doing it because, well, a little bit of a celebration tonight. I guess I'll get talking to you about it now. I've got a guest coming on next week, I mentioned. He is and this will be a recorded vid, so you'll be able to catch this. It won't be done live. But he is the author of the book Collision Low Crossers. Happen to have it right here if you've never read it. He is Nick Davidoff, and Nick has he's a Pulitzer Prize finalist and also a Sports Literary Award finalist for this book, actually. And in 2011, which happened to be the lockout season, the last lockout season we've seen in the NFL, Nick was invited to be part of the New York Jets. Mike Tannenbaum, then general manager, and Rex Ryan, of course, then head coach of the Jets, invited him to come in as a journalist. And I don't mean for a day. It was for the entire season. He had a code to get into the facility. He had an office. He had a locker. He went with them to the combine. He spent a great deal of time with the coaches. He was there every day, all day, with the coaching staff. He was in the rooms. He concentrated on defense quite a bit. Of course, got to know Rex Ryan very well. Of course, former Bills head coach also now. Rich Pettin, who was the defensive coordinator at that time for the Jets, and Pettin, of course, was the D coordinator for the Bills under Rex Ryan when he was here, and many other coaches that you've heard of. Wink Martindale, of course, who not the game show host, but the other Wink Martindale. But it's an amazing story that Nick has with these guys. He went through them with them through the entire offseason, got into preseason when the players showed up after the lockout, actually made some defensive calls up in the booth, and it's a great story about that. He actually called a dime spike 1 Vegas for the Jets, which resulted in the Jets intercepting the opposing quarterback and returning it for the score. So just an utterly cool situation. And Nick's going to be on the show with me. He has indicated that he could do 90 minutes, but I must be able to supply him with a beef on wick so he can make it through. So tip of the hat to him for knowing our Buffalo food. I was shocked that he wasn't talking about wings. But that show is coming up. And guys, if you've not read this book, it's fascinating, because one of the things we're going to concentrate on, because one of the things he concentrates on in the book is about our defensive coordinator, Jim Leonhard. Now, as you know, Jim Leonhard came to the Bills as an undrafted free agent when he started, and I think he played a couple 3 years with the Bills. I know he was here for a while. And the Bills must have let him go either after a season, or I believe that was the case. And he was signed by the Baltimore Ravens, whose defensive coordinator at that time was Rex Ryan. And he played 2 years with Rex at the Ravens. And then Rex went off and became the head coach of the Jets. So that was his next move also, because he followed, or Rex Ryan rather brought him along to the Jets. And Nick Davidoff in the book talks a lot about our Jim Leonhard back as a player, about the fact that he kept notebooks just crammed page after page after page with information and notes he'd taken on Rex Ryan's defense. And in fact, I've learned that Leonhard became something of a coach in the defensive backfield, because let's understand, Rex Ryan was a savant with defensive football. He was able to look at a piece of film and see everything that's going on. He had these abilities. But his teaching ability, sometimes it's not that he wasn't a great teacher. It's that what he was trying to teach was so complex. And Jim Leonard helped him out tremendously with that, actually being in the back end, on the field, in practices and so forth, explaining what schemes were and so forth. And this is where the coach, Jim Leonard, got his start. And his defensive start being from the Rex Ryan defensive tree. And that's a good one because that's also the Buddy Ryan defensive tree. And you, those of you that are older, you'll remember the Philadelphia, or I'm sorry, he was with Philadelphia, but when Buddy Ryan was the defensive coordinator of the Chicago Bears in '85, and of course, Mike Ditka was the offensive coordinator, or was he the coach? I forget which, but at any rate, Buddy Ryan was the D coordinator, and he ran the 46 defense, which is not about a scheme like 3-4 or 4-3. It's actually that's talking about a guy's number, one of the defenders on that defense. But that's where Rex learned his craft, and this is where, of course, Jim Leonard learned his craft. And then he took that with him, to Wisconsin, where he was defensive coordinator there, I think for 6 years. I think he was there perhaps even longer than that. And then Leonard went to Denver, and of course we faced his secondary and a lot of what he did on defense when the Bills visited Denver for the playoff game last season. And now we've got Jim Leonard here putting together his brand new defense, which is adopted from what Rex Ryan had done, but I think it's been deeply developed and refined by Jim. We're going to see something brand new that we've not seen from the Bills or perhaps from another team, because this is the first defensive coordinator spot that Jim Leonard has. But anyway, let's get back to a couple of your comments. Haven't heard much about our injured center, which leads me to believe he's probably out for Houston after last year. That scares me to death. Dominic, I think you are, and thank you for being in the house, Dominic Orsini, of course, a regular. But I would not make that assessment at all. It was a hamstring for him. They're going to have to take their time with it. But quite frankly, Connor McGovern is not sprinting down the field. So the hammy is not as big a deal in that situation. And certainly if he was going to play, the only time he would have played would have been in game one for the first two series when Josh Allen was out there. Now, no, we haven't seen him in practice because they're taking it easy on that. But remember, there are 17 days, which is really long in terms of normal situation, but 17 days between that final preseason game and when the Bills take the field. I mean, it's a long stretch. It's much longer than usual. I would not worry about Connor McGovern. McGovern will be out there. I would not worry about many of the injuries because at least Joe Brady has told you in his pressers that, look, if this was a regular season game week, these guys would be out practicing. But it's not. So they are being ultra cautious with the injuries that they do have. So guys are in 100% shape when it gets to the regular season. So I'm not going to worry that much about it. And Connor McGovern will be out there. I think we'll have our starting offensive line, which now, of course, includes Alec Anderson, AA, who is one of the nastiest guys on this team. And I'm glad to see he's there. Dave Edwards was great. He's now the $65 million man down with the Saints. Here's to him for actually getting that. But Alec Anderson has got a mean streak to him. And I'm very happy to see him on this offensive line. And what a luxury to have Corbett behind him So I think the Bills are in good shape on that offensive line. What else we have here? We're jumping in. Weeks 1 and 2 will be a tough test. Bills have a real tough schedule. Got us at 12 and 5. I have them up there also. I do have them going 2-0 actually to start. They're going into Houston, and the Houston House of Horrors thing is over. And I think the Bills defense will have a bit of a day against C.J. Stroud. And I think the Bills offense, I mean, they've seen this before. This is the thing. They know this defensive line. And I mean, let's remember, they lost by a whisker when they were down there last. It seems like they got the hell beat out of them because, in effect, they did with Josh Allen taking 8 sacks. But I just don't think it's going to be like that this year. And in terms of the home opener at the new Highmark Stadium with the Detroit Lions coming in, Bills aren't letting that game get away. I just don't see that happening. And I actually see them at maybe 13 and 4, the 12 and 5. I could definitely see. There are tough games early on. I think the Rams out there could be a tussle. But if you saw my schedule review, I like what the back half of the season kind of looks like for them. They've got a lot of the division games packed into the bottom third of the season, and I believe they do win the division this season. I think Patriots have a hard time coming out, and I realize that if nobody gets hurt, maybe they'll be okay, but people do get hurt. You need your depth, and Mike Vrabel came out and said, I believe late last week or earlier this week, that he basically said, we're not a deep team. He came out and really admitted that. So I anticipate the Bills doing pretty well here this season, and I think we're going to be in good shape with the situation we do have with Joe Brady. I think there's people afraid of the fact that he's not going to be effective, or I think some of you saw the John Murphy article that came out the other day where he's basically saying it's too soon for him, and he's basing it on comparisons to what happened back in the days of George Seifert and Bill Walsh of the 49ers. I don't know. To me, it sounded like John was taking a swan dive into a bowl of sour grapes and wallowing around in the juice while channeling Josh Allen. I think Joe Brady is going to be just fine as the head coach of this team. And Norm, you're back with, good point, Dominic. Also, Ty Johnson. And, Ty Johnson is, again, a little bit more of a worry. But the problem is we have to look at the fact of how this Bills team treats preseason injuries. And, of course, we had Ty in a walking boot at one point, and now he's running not too long after. But I think the walking boot, situation is a precaution. We'll see what happens with that. But, if it's a situation where it's going to be tough for Ty to get started, we might, perhaps they sit him down for 4 games, depending on how much that injury is, and have him on injured reserve where he can come back. And then, you've got Ian Wheeler and, Frank Gore Jr. Unlike Frank, a lot of people think that Frank would have a harder time when it gets to be an actual regular season game. But I think Ian Wheeler looked good also. And, frankly, we're talking about, if it's not Ty, it's going to be tough to really replace, because Ty has been great as a third down back, pass catching back. But I think we need to remember that the backs are going to be far more involved in this passing game than they were a season ago or previous seasons under McDermott. Ralph, what's your record prediction for the first 4 games? Well, as we know, I should bring them up here. I think I actually know them because we've got the opener with Houston. Let me get this over here. You guys will probably beat me to it here. But the opener with Houston, and then we host 3 in a row where we will be seeing the Lions. I'm getting there now. Should have had this up here. Here's the schedule right now. I had this all memorized. I did the whole thing. The Lions, of course, the Chargers, and the Patriots. And those are the 3 home games in a row at the new Highmark Stadium. I've got the Bills going 4-0, and I believe they're going to be brand new and unknown to a lot of these clubs that they've played in the past. I don't think a lot. I don't think a lot at all of Jared Goff as a quarterback for the Lions. I don't think a lot at all either of Justin Herbert. I mean, I've heard his whole career how this is a superstar and how he's so great and how he's a monster. And I just haven't seen it. There's been flashes of it. But again, I think the Bills are going to have something this season they haven't had in years, and that's an interior pass rush. And I think that will make a difference. And then the Patriots. And, of course, there's a little payback to the Patriots for when they came in here last season. That was the game, you recall, where the Bills wore those rivalry uniforms. I know some of you like them. You know my opinion on them. And then that was also the game that McDermott came out and got the moniker McGlasses because he had the clear frames with the clear lenses on, which is fine. Wear glasses. But it just begs the question, what were you doing prior to this? Was it contacts that didn't work out? I really don't know. But at any rate, I see the Bills beating the Houston Texans and then going 3-0 in their new house. And after that, the Bills will be headed out to the Los Angeles Rams. That could be a tough game out at SoFi. It will, of course, be a short week for both of them, I believe. So, but that'll be a Monday nighter. And then the Raiders should be interesting too, because the Raiders we don't know if Fernando Mendoza will be starting by then. That's a possibility. But then we also don't know if we're going to have a situation where, the Bills don't really see that coming. But I just don't think we're going to see that from this team. It's a new situation for the Bills, and I think there's different attitudes on the teams that we don't know. But I do have the Bills going 4-0 and then perhaps 4-1 if they get out to the Rams and have a tough time there. Black Cloud, I just want to give my sincere condolences to Ed Oliver and his family. I know he wants privacy. I respect that. So tragic. Rest well, little man. Absolutely. I was taken aback by that. Anyone who's a parent obviously will hear that and just shudder at hearing it. And I said my prayers for Ed and his family, and I think the universe is going to come back and deliver him a season of a lifetime, because I think he'll have somebody on his shoulder while he's doing it. And again, we won't get deep into it. It's an utter horrific tragedy. Myself and Mrs. Ralph actually waited until nearly our 21st wedding anniversary to have our only child taste salty. And I don't know, I guess maybe when you have a child, when you're older, I don't know, the impact of things and life and so forth is more apparent. And I just could not imagine. And I was so hoping that it was a false report, but why would it be? But thanks so much for that, Black Cloud. And won't be bringing that up again, we're going to offer Ed his privacy on that. And now I have to see, I'm going to see if he comes in on this stage here. Let me check it out. I don't know when John's going to arrive, but at any rate, we'll get him in here when he shows up. Dominic is back. In my opinion, Bills get to 11 wins by going 2-2 in the first 4 and winning all 4 games against the Jets in Miami and going 5-4 in the other 9. And I could see that. I like the fact that they have the Jets and the Dolphins sort of as bookends of their last set of games. And as we know, the NFL does, of course, put all division games at the last week of the season. So that being the case, I just think that the Bills will fare well in getting to the division and have the ability to really affect that at the end of the season. And I also think we're going to see, of course, the Patriots we're looking at a situation where they're going to be playing a first-place schedule rather than a last-place schedule. And remember, the Patriots' schedule last year was historically weak. And yes, it only differed from the Bills by 3 games, but that's all division schedules are just that, from the first to worst, essentially, in how the games are scheduled. So, yeah, I believe that I think the Patriots are going to have a little bit of a time of it this season. But I do have the Bills winning the division, and I've got them going pretty deep. But I think we'll get back to the point where we're at that precipice looking over the cliff in a playoff game. I think we're going to get back there with Joe Brady and see how Joe Brady handles it when we get there. It's a good book title. Cancer Moon is with us, 1925. Again, guys, if you're new to the show, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. We'll be bringing you content all season long and has some other cool plans in the works here. As I stated earlier, Arthur Motes will be back on the show. We're getting it worked out right now as to when we have a schedule. We're going to go ahead and talk about where he feels the Bills sit here prior to the season. And then again, we'll be coming back with the author of Collision Low Crossers, Nick Davidoff. And that should be, I would say, within a week or two. I want to try to get him in here while it's still preseason. And he will have insights that will be one of the best shows we've done on the NFL in general, and also really on the AFC East, where he was resident essentially as a coach with the Jets for an entire season. And then certainly Jim Leonard, with whom he's very familiar, and that ought to be a lot of fun when we get to that. JP is here with us. Ralph, I guess if the Bills' final regular season record is correct, I can have that killer fez on your dome. I'm going to have to start manufacturing these. Yeah, and I don't know. It's like a bucket hat, I guess. It's not necessarily a fez, but I don't normally use the term fez much. In fact, you guys might remember I had the small patch on the front of it. It was Buffalo Bills. But when I went on, and you can check this out, I actually let you guys know, but also check it out if you haven't. I went on the Mafia Family Ties show, traveled actually to Hamburg from Michigan, where the studio was located, and got on the show with the fabulous Del Reed, who, of course, is the owner of 26 Shirts, and also the co-founder of Bill's Mafia. And we had a great talk on his show, but because it's a big studio they do that at, you cannot have anything with the Bills logo on it. So I stripped that off this hat for that, and then did these modifications more recently. But yes, if you guessed the regular season correctly, I'm going to have to do something about that, JP. Thank you very much for that. All of our coaches are taking the next step in their careers. That's for sure. Well, certainly, really, all of them, I think, with the exception of Pete Carmichael Jr., who has been an offensive coordinator, was for a long time with Sean Payton, but similarly, as with Sean Payton, as will be the case with Joe Brady will be the play caller as the head coach, such as Sean Payton has been, but Pete Carmichael Jr. is still the offensive coordinator. And if you want to get a feeling of what that separation is, well, put it this way. Joe Brady is the play caller. He's driving the Ford F1 or GT1 or whatever 24 hours of Le Mans car you want to talk about. Brady's the driver. But Pete Carmichael Jr. is designing the car. Be sure of that. This is not going to be Joe Brady's offense spit back out at us from what we saw last season. And it wouldn't be that anyway, because I believe that our head coach last year had his hands kind of on the offense. I think he kind of stepped on the coordinators a little bit. He called Joe Brady cute after the loss to the Patriots in game, I think it was week 5, where I believe the cute he was talking about was running the jet sweep to Dawson Knox where the ball was fumbled, and the Patriots recovered it in the Bills' end, and I think went on to score. That was certainly a thing that influenced that game. But I think we've got a different situation here with these coordinators this year. I think Joe Brady is treating this head coaching position far differently than we saw from before. Let's go on with your comments here. Do you have a mailing address for this YouTube channel? My son made you a Bills memorabilia, and I know you and your family will wear. Yes, absolutely. I certainly will, and I will put that in the. Let me get it to you afterwards here, Jeff, so I can get it in there. But thanks so much for that. I would look forward to that, and we will. I'll tell you what. If I get that, I'll have it on the show here for certain. So thanks so much, and I will get you that information. But that's great to hear. Cancer Moon. Joe Brady led 2019 LSU to beat powerhouse Clemson more than just once. Joe Burrow and Jamar. More than just Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. He knows how to command a downfield passing attack. And Joe Brady is also, I think, a good leader of men because he is, I think there's an emphasis on the connection in this team and the accountability and the things that he's looking for. He's not just looking for schematic things. He's looking, are guys helping other guys up off the field and into the play? Is the sideline getting excited when something happens? And of course, we saw when Kenai Walker got his interception against the Carolina Panthers, the entire team went down the field and celebrated with him in that end zone. So I think definitely it was a situation where we're going to see. I think we're going to see a different scene on the sidelines, and I think Joe Brady will definitely be pretty effective. 10 jewels and a gold coin. Awesome. Jeffrey Meyer is with us here in the house. Well, I think we've got that message repeated. So awesome. I look forward to whatever that is when it comes. I'll get you that address. So the thing I wanted to talk about now was actually I think there were some things stated about the stadium, and I think we saw quite a bit out there about the fact that there were seats with obstructions and so forth. And there's a couple. There are spots down low in areas where you've got a clear fence, essentially, maybe with some cables through it, and then a railing. I had that experience where we were. I believe the Bills have offered those seats for a bit less for the PSL holders on them. But I found the stadium to be awesome. I did tell you my problems with it. I had a thing with the audio and also with the video board, but I do believe that the place is definitely it's huge and yet it's intimate, and so I'm anxious to see how it sounds when we actually get to a game here coming up. Hang on with me 1 second right here. I've got to see if I've got, I don't have it handy. Been expecting John to come on the show here tonight, and I sent him an invite. I know he was going to be involved with another program, and I'm not quite sure how I bring him in if he is here already. But at any rate, if we don't get to him, he will be on the show here coming up. And I don't know if he's tried to text me or not. I don't think I even have my phone nearby me, but what the heck. We're looking forward to having him on, though, when he does get here. Let's keep on going with your comments here. Geno Stone or DeMar Hamlin, you think either make the roster? You know, the Bills, and this is interesting because the Bills have 9 corners listed. They've got 6 safeties listed, and they've got 3 guys listed as defensive backs. And I think that's notable because some of these guys are being really referred to as essentially hybrid players when you're calling them a defensive back. It's difficult to say. I'm not wanting to jump into my roster predictions just yet. But certainly, you know, if the Bills keep 4, what are we talking about? Because we're talking safeties here. And certainly you've got Cole Bishop and CJGJ, who are set to be your starters. And then for backups, I mean, you've got, and Jordan Hancock is really being called one of those defensive backs. So I'm not referring to him as a safety. I think it's more of a hybrid type of situation. And I think if they keep 4, one or the other is not going to be there. And I know Geno Stone hasn't had the greatest preseason. DeMar is not like DeMar just doesn't strike me as much as an aggressive, you know, apex predator style player. But DeMar is around the ball quite a bit. So it'll be interesting to see, because if you're talking about Cole Bishop and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, and then you're going to, Jalen Kilgore is making the team, obviously. He's going to be special. And then what else are we talking about? And there's these 2, and I think they only do keep 4. One of the other things that is interesting as far as what we might see for these roster moves, and I call it manufacturing roster spots, because we've got a situation where Ray Davis has been taking some punt returns this preseason. Be very interested to see how that works tomorrow night, because with Ray Davis taking punt returns, you don't have McCole Hardman Jr. Or I don't know if he's calling himself Junior, but McCole Hardman won't be out there. And if McCole Hardman is not returning punts, I don't know if he actually sticks in this receiver room where you've got probably, 5 or 6 being kept. And basically, you've manufactured a roster spot if you don't need to keep Hardman for punt returns, if you're going to have Ray Davis both as a kick returner and a punt returner. And that's one of the 2 spots that we're talking about for them being manufactured. The other actually would definitely be based on the fullback. Now, we heard from Brady and from Pete Carmichael in the offseason that, yes, fullbacks will be brought into camp. They did not necessarily indicate that we have to have a fullback in this offense. I think you bring in guys, you look at them, and then feed them the fire hose when we get into camp and see how it goes. Well, we saw that Jackson Acker was released from the team. Ben Van Sumeren is still with the Bills as a fullback. I found it interesting that he did not get on the field in an offensive capacity when the Bills were at Cleveland this last weekend. I think he was out there certainly as a special teams player, and Van Sumeren is a good special teamer, but so are other guys, and I found it more interesting that basically Shane Zylstra, number 48, tight end, was on the field for the Bills offense when Van Sumeren wasn't. And that raises the question, if the Bills are not talking about keeping a tight end, well, what are we talking about here? Because if we have a situation where, say the Bills run more 12 or 13 personnel and have all three tight ends out there, but you're using Jackson Haas as one of the best blocking tight ends in the league, certainly on the team, perhaps you're using him as an H-back. You're using him in positions like you would have had Reggie Gilliam in last season. So does this become a case where you don't need the fullback because you've got Jackson Haas filling that role, and Jackson Haas, of course, is also becoming a great receiver. So if both of those situations occur, Ray Davis doing both punt and kick returns, so you don't have two guys for those two jobs, and you've got Jackson Haas kind of taking the role of a fullback, H-back, whatever you want to call it, in an offensive capacity with the Bills, simply by running 13 personnel. If you just manufactured two roster spots that would be available for other areas on the team, and that's just a very interesting question to me. So we'll see what that happens, what happens with that, and we'll know certainly coming up here. Sunday is the cutdown day. Cancer Moon is here. I hope Leonard will be on the sidelines too. Yes, absolutely, and I think he will be. I think he was trying it out, and I think Brady had them both try it just to see what the reactions would be. But we do know that Brady is leaving that decision as to where to conduct their business from entirely to the coordinators. He's not calling the shots on that. And that would be something different because I think McDermott called a lot of shots, and including the Bills with both coordinators up in the booth last season, who, by the way, that's the only team in the league that had both the OC and DC up in the booth last season. Just saying. Woke as Joke is with us. 716 native of 25 years in the civil engineering industry. I'm disappointed in our new digs. A 10-year-old design copy, overpriced food, long lines, small screens, and twice the cost of Tottenham. Sad. Well, I respect your opinion on it. I kind of like the Coliseum design of the stadium personally. I like the canopy. It is very reflective of the sound. The crowd's going to be super loud in there. I was disappointed at the sound system when I was there for the Panthers game. It was boomy and echoey. It was as if I was hearing the speaker above me, and I was in basically the East End zone up in the 400s, compared to speakers on the other side of the field, of course, other end of the field for that matter, which were probably some 140 yards away from me, and hearing those after the fact of hearing the local ones. So I think they were working on it. I think they were working to see how the sound system reacted with bodies in the seats, because we know how much reflectivity is in that stadium when it's empty. I don't know that it's such a design copy. I think that Terry Pegula liked Tottenham. I sort of like the Coliseum sort of looking situation. I would rather the Bills had not done a covered stadium, some sort of facility that looks like it's like it's the Jetsons just landed rather than a football stadium. I like how huge yet intimate the building is on the inside. You are on top of this. I think it's built precisely for its purpose. And in terms of the, I didn't see long lines so much. There may have been. I know we paid quite a bit for a couple of waters and a beer. I will give you that. Long lines. I think the bathrooms are amazing in this place. They're like factories. You go in one end, and I got it for my girls who were there, who were just. There are so many stalls. I mean, it's going to be a fast process for the bathrooms. And the small screens is probably my biggest bitch with it, and it didn't need to be that way, because at the west end of the stadium, which is the main video board, although there's one of similar size at the east end, above that video board is the Highmark Stadium logo. And the Highmark Stadium logo is huge. It's actually inside the stadium at both ends. And had that logo not been there, the video board at the west end of the stadium could have been twice as high. It's very wide for its length now, certainly wider than 16 by 9. But if that had been increased and doubled in size, you would have taken the video image that they're displaying now and made that 4 times as large. Now, I know Terry Pagula needed money for this stadium. He's paid for 53% of it. He had to get loans through the NFL. They had to hire, minority ownership. I don't mean minority in terms of racial terms. I meant a lower owner with less of a stake in the team. Vince Carter was one of those. So he needed money for this. So, but if Highmark, in giving them their money, made this insistence, I would be a little bit pissed at whoever allowed that, and Highmark also, because Highmark's logos are already outside the stadium, and they're huge. And by the time we walk in, we already know what fucking stadium we're in, right? We already know what stadium we're in. So those logos don't need to be on the inside of the building, in my estimation. And if you really needed them to be showing, just make the video screen twice as high. And throw Highmark in your graphics production up there. Or put the damn thing above the level of the canopy if it has to be in there at the end. God forbid that wouldn't look good. I think that's a really big miss. And I'm really sorry that the people that came in with the naming rights of this took advantage of this, because I can't imagine the Bills came to Highmark and said, listen, we're going to give you like 4, logos that are 200 feet each in length. They're not that large, but, there's 2 on the outside. There might be at both ends, actually, even. I mean, and we don't need the logos on the inside of the stadium. Thanks. We know where we are. So, woke is joke. Thanks for that comment there. I got in at the 48-minute mark. Do you think linebacker Buffalo Joe Andreessen stays on the roster? And, hey, Fume, how you doing? It's good to see you here. And that's a great question, and I wonder about it. And when I was watching the game this past Saturday, there was a group of guys I know that were doing an X chat about it and bemoaning the state of the Bills, essentially the Bills' inside linebacker situation. Now, of course, as we know, the inside linebackers are really 2 on the field. There will be sub-packages, believe me, and so forth with this defense. But in the strict sense of what the defense is, it's a 3-4. That's 3 interior linemen, but it's a 5-man front, because 2 of the 4 being linebackers, are actually edge rushers and will be on the line of scrimmage, giving you 5 on the line of scrimmage. It's almost, you could call it a 5-2, but people just don't use that nomenclature. And you'll have a lot of sub-packages that change that. You'll see 4-man fronts at times. You'll see the 5-man fronts and over fronts. In fact, you're going to see even guys moving from position to position. You might see Deion Walker add a 1-tech, that would be your nose, but he might be playing a 3-tech or a 4-eye also. Hell, there's going to be times where they're going to have him out where the edge rushers are. There's going to be a lot of differences that teams will see. But in terms of those inside linebackers, there are only 2 in the normal configuration of the defense. And right now, of course, you got Terrell Bernard, who he's good, but we have to worry about injury. And then Dorian Williams, who, and we'll have to see, the book's still out on him as far as his coverage abilities. And these guys I was watching the game with, that was the complaint, that the inside linebackers were poor in coverage. They were even bemoaning what Caleb Zallarm-Orr was doing. Now, we know that Joe Andreessen is, he's good at run fits, he's aggressive, he triggers, and he hits. And we saw that even against Cleveland. His coverage abilities aren't really as good. Now, the word on Zallarm-Orr is that, yes, he will be able to get there. I just think it requires reps. But yeah, there's a question of whether Joe is going to be on this roster or not, or end up on the practice squad. And it's also a matter of what the Bills might want to do, because these same cats I'm talking with are talking about, oh, we need to bring in a Jermaine Pratt, or we need to bring back Shaq Thompson, or hell, is Matt Milano sold his house yet? So it's tough to say. I think the other thing that plays into this, though, is that I think the Bills like Andreessen from his aggressive standpoint. And I think some of the sub-packages we're going to see, even though what we're talking about now is a 5-man line up front. You've got the 3 interiors and the 2 edges. You've got your 2 inside linebackers. So that's 7, and that leaves 4. That leaves you 2 corners and 2 safeties. But obviously, there will be sub-packages that bring in, for example, D. Alford as a slot corner. Or you're going to have situations with hybrid guys like Jordan Hancock. And there's going to be a lot of alterations in what we see. And the reason this defense it's going to appear to be complex to the opponents, but it won't be so complex to the players itself. And that's largely because of how they're going to handle personnel changes, and basically they're going to put guys in different spots all over this defense. I spoke before about defensive linemen playing perhaps out on an edge, or everything from that to a 1-tech. You're going to see guys that are hybrids that are rushing. I mean, Jordan Hancock is basically the prototype of this for the Bills. And, you'll see situations where you've got 2 corners plus D. Alford out there as a slot corner. I think one thing's for certain, the slot corner is now a completely different position than what we saw with Sean McDermott's defense. And I don't know how much the way McDermott played the slot actually, I think it might have taken its toll on Teron Johnson. I mean, we all saw, I was at the game last December 7th when Johnson got beat badly by Mike Gesicki, a tight end, going right by him in the end zone for another score for the Bengals. And a lot of that was because basically he had to do a lot of run fits to get where he needed to be on that Bills defense. And unfortunately, I think that took its toll on him. And he, of course, is now, I think he's off in the AFC West now, if I'm not mistaken. But you're not going to see D. Alford playing that slot corner at all, like we saw from Teron Johnson. And I think we're going to see some different sub packages, which are going to make this defense really appear differently as we go through this season. But then back to the question, Fume, on Andreessen, it's possible. I do think that inside linebacker is a spot that could benefit from an extra guy on the roster based on what they want to try to do vis-a-vis the situation of manufacturing a couple of roster spots based on if they've got Bray Davis returning both punts and kicks, and you don't include a fullback because you've got Jackson Hawes accomplishing that. Well, if you create a couple of roster spots doing that, then we'll see what happens with the inside linebacker situation. But it is a concern. Let Mrs. Ralph Rant know that Labatt's now has Bills cans in circulation. The UPC code in the cans is in the shape of the original standing buffalo, like on your left shoulder. I'll have to check that out and let her know that. Of course, you saw her premiere on the channel when they discovered the beer bush trying to find a bathroom spot. It was funny at that game. I talked to a couple of other guys. You probably saw them in the video. Bon and Matt's, I believe, were their name. I'm trying to remember that exactly, but they were smart. They had little tiny cups with whatever potion was in them, but it certainly wasn't a beer, and it certainly was not a filler of the facilities where you're going back and forth. But, of course, we didn't get that. We were just there with Labatt's. I will pass that along for you. Thanks so much. Steve, I'm not saying the stadium design isn't a good one, but a $2.4 billion versus $1.2 billion Tottenham cost. I wish they would use more resources on things like efficient concessions and better screens everywhere. I think the concessions are efficient, and the screen cost. I mean, I don't think that's a big deal of it. They just screwed up with those Highmark logos inside the stadium. The other thing that we identified is that there are small strips just beneath the club seating, I believe, just at the bottom of the 200 level, that show you the score and the clock and so forth. And we thought those were rather small, actually, also. But I do think the video board is a big miss in this case. And I do think the stadium would be loud with that canopy, but that video board could have been twice that height, 4 times as much video space. There's nothing there behind it anyway. That's all catwalk behind there where that logo is and behind the board. And go take a look at the pictures, and the board could just be twice as high and occupy the space of that logo. I really would, that would be my first question if I was going to ask somebody about that. But I think the stadium is, and as far as the pricing goes, I mean, yeah, I mean, it was 1.2, it was half the price. Well, that was before, inflation and before everything that's occurred to make things more expensive. I mean, obviously it was going to be more. And let's remember, the stadium was only supposed to be $1.7 billion to start. And that's how you had the exact split between the taxpayers paying $850 million and Pagula paying $850 million. There's your $1.7 billion. And let's remember, on the taxpayer side, it was $250 million of that $850 million that came from Erie County. So yeah, Erie County paid taxes on it. Well, you got the stadium, okay? So it's there. But the other $600 million came from New York State. And that wasn't really like people being asked to pay more tax. Where the money actually came from was New York State made a deal in collecting on casinos run by the Seneca Nation, where New York State apparently was owed monies for the operation of said casinos. And Governor Kathy Hochul essentially just went and located that money and appropriated it for the stadium. So this crap about how much people are paying for it, Terry Pagula paid for 53%. And you're saying, well, you just got done saying it was $1.7 billion. It's $2.4 billion, you're saying. 2.26 is the number I had. but who's counting at that point? Well, remember that all the overages over the original price of $1.7 billion were to be paid by Terry Pegula and the Bills. There was no more tax money brought out for that. So understand that the stadium was mostly paid for by Terry Pegula. He had to secure loans for it. And, some of these other stadiums going up are $3.4 billion. He didn't have the money. This is actually a good deal. This is actually really, it kind of reminds me of when we re-signed Ed Oliver, and everybody thought it was so much. But we got Ed Oliver for what we got him for at the time, and that's how I feel about this stadium. Anyway, we're getting it going now. Norm, the Bills fan, so sick of the bitching about how bad the new stadium is. If it wasn't for Josh Allen, we would be the Toronto or Austin Bills. The old Rich Stadium was I think you're trying to say a poo-poo hole. Well, I don't know. It was pretty cool. I'll tell you what, some interesting things on that old stadium. One of which, we watched the stadium break ground in what? Was it the summer of 2022 or was it spring of 23? Whichever. But it took years to construct. And when Rich Stadium was built across the street, across Abbott Road, all those years ago, it only cost $22 million in those days. And the other thing is that the construction was actually really quick. If you go look at pictures, you could see pictures in February of 1973, some just 7-8 months before the Bills would host, I believe, the then Washington Redskins for the first preseason game there. And, of course, the first regular season game where the Bills hosted and defeated the New York Jets. The very first regular season game at Rich Stadium. I was there, by the way. You go look at pictures in winter in February. This thing, they don't even have all the steel up. It's amazing how quickly they got it done. Yes, it was very simple. It got something accomplished because there was all these ideas. And I don't know if you guys know why it's dug out of the ground. One of the things that many people know, maybe you don't know, because if you've never been to the stadium, if you walked up to the old Ralph, which is gone now, basically you just saw the upper decks coming up. The lower bowl, essentially the top of the lower bowl, was really basically at grade level or the height of a one-story building. And that's because the pit into an Indian burial ground, apparently, which explains the Super Bowl losses, and we won't go there. But the field at that stadium was 50 feet below grade. And that's what astonished me the first time I walked in there, because you go in the entrances, you go through the ticketing things, and you go out there and you see the stadium, and it's down. It's all down in this, it's pit. It was so cool the first time I saw it. And you actually take, in the lower bowl, take stairs down to your seat to get there. Now, of course, the new stadium is not exactly like that, but what many people don't know is that even in the new Highmark Stadium, the field is still 35 feet below grade. And the reason it was done like that in the original Rich Stadium is because there was an ordinance that no building could be higher than whatever height that was, and that was required by the town of Orchard Park. It was an ordinance. And so that's why they had to build the stadium with it dug out of the ground, which kind of helped with steel and structure and so forth, because now you put the whole lower bowl into a hole rather than on steel framing. And that's probably how they got it done so quickly. But she was a beaut that first day. And that stadium held 80,020, but of course it had very few suites. Excuse me. Now, one thing I'll mention, though, is that the east end of the stadium, that building that was there, which was the original office building, for the stadium has been retained, and they are going to be building something around that in that area. It will not just be parking lot. I don't know precisely what's planned. This is not something they had planned really when we started the new stadium, or even, I don't even think it was considered when they started demolishing the old stadium. But I think there's some ideas now for what to do there, and it certainly will not just be a parking lot or the camping parking lot. We got it going here between the guys. Woke is joking, saying, Norm, I'm not bitching, simply saying that for the cost, pardon me, I wish they would have used the resources more effectively for a better experience, that's all. Gray collar uniforms and a $28 chicken sandwich. Yeah, listen, we tailgated there and went inside and got 2 waters and a tall of bats. And those 3 bottles of liquid cost $34. And yeah, that's kind of insane. You know, as far as the Nickel City uniforms, I mean, if those are the colors you were given that you had to use in order to create these, okay, all right, whatever. But I think one of the problems for the Bills is the fact that the Bills came to be in the old AFL. There was only 8 teams to start, right? It was at a time where we didn't have a divided country and a lot of people liked their colors. And what did the Bills pick? Red, white, and blue. You know, and 2 of which are primary colors. I mean, you can't go wrong. So the Bills have basically been blessed yet cursed by their original colors and trying to come up with these alternate uniforms. And every time they've gone with something different, with the exception of, we recall the uniforms and the red helmets in the Super Bowl years, then they made the change, I think it was in early 90s, to the darker blue uniforms. They were horrifying. And then, you know, we come out with this rivalry uniform business last season that's talking about ice all over the uniform. It's got basically numbers on a white jersey with either gray or blue outline, but a white jersey, chrome numbers as if they were shiny metal. And I've repeated this before, I couldn't tell with the tight ends, 85, 86, and 88, I couldn't tell between our tight ends because I couldn't see the number on the jersey reflecting in the lights of the old Ralph when they played in those uniforms in that debacle of a game hosting the Patriots. And I said that night, those uniforms need to be taken out and thrown in a dumpster somewhere on a dark corner in Lackawanna and set afire. And it's happened again. I've heard comments on the Nickel City uniforms like it looked like, you know, I don't know, a high school or maybe even a college design project where they just decided to, okay, let's just stop. And again, we can't see the numbers. They're dark numbers on a dark gray jersey. It's just, but I think those are misses. I think the stadium in and of itself is good. It's on grass. I'm glad to see that. And Josh Allen made a pretty strong statement about the grass. But and actually they're not gray collar uniforms. They're blue collar. And we all have always had blue collars, except if they're white collars, especially if they're blue if we're on the road whites. But we already had blue collar. We didn't need more. No, I don't like the uniforms. I don't like the helmets. I don't like how the 2 charges meet in the very back of the helmet. I suppose it could be good. It looks like a V, or it also looks like an arrow pointing down. I don't like the fact that they didn't have a line or a stripe dividing them because it is basically a charge on both sides of the buffalo. So I think that was an exercise in just creating new uniforms for the sake of creating new uniforms. I don't think it was necessary, and I think it was unfortunate. Max Hairston is injured more than healthy, Jeff says. I'm declaring him another Bills first-round bust. He gets out-muscled by every receiver he covers. Those are rather broad and sweeping statements on him. And yes, he got injured certainly this last season. Part of that was, the fact that he had to be out on the field for that Jets game was ridiculous. I'd have put anybody else out there. I'm talking about the closing game in the new Highmark. And certainly got injured in training camp last season. I'm not ready to declare him a bust or anything like that, but I do believe that, he has questions that need to be answered this season. I don't know if he's the predatory type player that Jim Leonard's been looking for this defense, and that's precisely why IGB is a cornerback on this team. So we'll see what happens there. And I also think another guy they like is Kenai Walker. I think it's interesting, some of the young talent that's come into this team and how it's looking this preseason and what it could possibly mean. And then finally, of course, if you're talking defense, Deion Walker. Deion Walker, he's the game wrecker that we've been looking for a long time. We were hoping, it was other guys, but it wasn't. The other guys will be great with him on the field, but Deion Walker is a game wrecker. And this is what the Bills' defense has needed for a long time. And I think what you're going to see, I will make a prediction on the Bills' pass rush. It's not going to be so much Groot and Chubb charging in from the edges and crushing quarterbacks all the time. They're not the bursty, bendy type of edge rusher. These are more compression style, bigger guys. This is what they want. Bigger, stronger. But I think it's the interior pass rush from the interior defensive line that's going to make a difference for the Bills. And I think we'll see that take effect actually when they go down to Houston. Because if you are able to affect the quarterback from the middle, from your defensive line, it works so much better because the guy that's affecting them is that much closer to the quarterback than you are coming from a wide nine. And if you got guys getting rid of balls quickly, well, the idea is you probably want to get back there as fast as you can. And the shortest route would be from the middle of the defensive line. And I think this is where Deion Walker and Ed and Landon Jackson, TJ Sanders, I think, and he even apparently Gaines has looked good. I thought they brought him in as a camp body for the last game, but no, he's actually got some Harrison Phillips sort of traits to him, which I really like. But I think this is going to be a big, tough interior defensive line. And they've not had a lot of chance out on the field to go after opposing quarterbacks. In practice, you cannot touch Josh Allen. It's as if you're in a drag race, like a quarter mile on a funny car, but you got to stop the car 50 yards past the starting line. You can never really get going. And we had that a little bit. Deion Walker was fabulous in the 9-10 snaps he had against Carolina, but we're going to see. We're going to see when this regular season hits, when it's for real, and what Jim Leonard has hidden from the league, but will be revealing. So, but good point, Jeff, on that. I do think that. I think IGB is here. I've got another just a thing to mention on the defense. I'll get to it in a moment. Well, technically, Allen wasn't even here before the Bills were sold to the Pagulas. I will say this much, though. Had Trump been the owner, he wouldn't be the president ever. Should have sold to Trump. No. I'm really, really glad Terry Pagula has the team. And like Forrest Gump once said, that's all I got to say about that. It pains me that Bean brought in guys like Beasley, Miller, Bosa, and they couldn't get it done. I think that contributed to McDermott getting bounced. You know, and that may well be the case. We have to get an understanding, and we never will have it, as to what the relationship between Bean and McDermott actually was last season. And we won't know. We only got a hint of it from Terry Pagula's remarks after McDermott was fired. I mean, Cole Beasley was a good ball player. You know, Miller, you know, Joey Bosa. Bosa was hurt a lot. I just think that, and if you want to go watch an interesting interview, watch Sean McDermott talk with Jason Garrett. The channel's called Coach to Coach. I'm amazed. He must have just gotten it started. He's only got 847 subs, but he's got McDermott. And by the way, we are working to get a former Bills coach on this show, and that's all I'm going to say about that. But that is something that is coming. But at any rate, I just believe that McDermott succeeded surprisingly early with this team. He gets the Bills out of the playoff drought in his very first season. No doubt he came into the job worried about every last little thing and probably looked under every pebble and stone for every clue he could find on how to do the job the best he could. And the result he got was a playoff berth after 17 years of none for the Bills. He must have figured, oh, I'm doing something right here. So he continued it. And he gets Josh Allen, and of course they got to teach Josh, and there's that first year, and of course McDermott, when he got beat, boy, did he get beat. But they went 6-10, but then they started getting into the playoffs, winning divisions, 7 years of playoffs in a row. And, you know, certainly I think a lot of it was based on Josh. Josh was coming of age of then. But the defense was effective, and the defense was effective because we'd always heard that McDermott was the safety whisperer. And what you had was a situation with Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer as the Bills' safeties. These guys are like, you know, postgraduate. I mean, they're like doctoral program football guys. These weren't just like players. McDermott had two professors in the back of that defense, Hyde and Poyer. We heard the names for years. And the reason it worked was because they prevented, and there's no better illustration of this than, certainly no better illustration of this than when Micah Hyde comes rushing under a Mac Jones pass in the Bills' cold, perfect wild card playoff win in 2022, which is a sure touchdown, but he's just there in time because he just saw it and he knew. And McDermott's defense worked because of that. And Josh and the boys got to where they could outscore other teams, and nobody could get behind the defense. Well, Hyde and Poyer went away. And when Hyde and Poyer were gone, things changed, obviously. And in the last couple of years, and especially this last season, I believe that McDermott actually had his hands on the offense. And I was really interested to see that Joe Marino on Locked On Bills the other day had a show. He actually brought on Bruce Nolan, but he put up a graphic showing that the Bills have gone down in their number of drives, offensive drives per game since 2020. I believe it was 10.8 per game back then. And last season, it was 10.0 from 10.3. And in his discussion with Bruce Nolan, they're talking about, well, you know, you're maybe you think you're protecting your quarterback by having fewer drives, less chances for mistakes. But on the other hand, you know, less chances for doing something great with fewer drives. And I couldn't believe they were saying this, because what was really going on is McDermott was protecting his defense because he no longer had Hyde and Poyer in the back end of it. And if you don't think guys in the back end of are important, go back to the Jets, who we talked about early in this program. The 2011 Jets, where author Nick Dawidoff was in camp with them and basically part of the team for the entire season. I'm having him on the show, actually, guys, here in next couple of weeks, certainly, hopefully before the regular season gets going. But, you know, what we're talking about is Jim Leonhard back then was huge in that defensive backfield for the Jets. And if you go back and look at the records from that season, in about November or so, the Patriots just beat the hell out of the Jets 45-3 in a regular season game. And yet the Jets were able to beat those same Patriots 28-24 in the AFC divisional playoff. And why? Jim Leonhard was hurt for the 45-3 game, but he was out there for this. And that may have been Rex Ryan at his ultimate best. He would run subgroups out there and run them off the field. He was confusing the hell out of Tom Brady. And that's why the Jets defeated them in that playoff game. And I think the Jets went on to lose to Pittsburgh, when I think that's the season that Pittsburgh went ahead and beat the Cardinals, I believe, in the Super Bowl. But that's why McDermott had to protect his defense, because you had a situation where you had no more Hyde and Poyer. Hyde was already gone. Poyer came in. He helped, work with a couple of players, but Micah Hyde was the guy. He was like the professor back there. He was like Jim Leonhard. And when McDermott no longer had them, and his defense was more susceptible to getting beat by the run, and you say, why by the run if it was safeties that left? Well, because with those safeties over the top before, that prevented people from going long on them. But now it was different. It changed, and teams could do anything against the Bills. And they were still hitting long balls, but certainly McDermott's defense was never set up to stop the run. Jim Leonhard stated early on, go watch the press conference, it's in there. His priority for the Buffalo Bills defense is to stop the run. It's not getting to the quarterback. It's not preventing the passing game from seeing great success from the opposing offense. It's to stop the run. And if you stop the run, everything else flows from that. I don't think we have an understanding of, how should I put this? It's like if you look at a hierarchy or an organizational chart of people, and you've got a president, and then you've got, vice presidents beneath. I don't think we understand how much power the coordinators on this team have, and how much Joe Brady is counting on them to do their job, because Joe Brady is not there to do their job. And I think Brandon Beane's getting better at his job. They're finding good guys. I mean, what he did in the draft this year was basically manufacturing draft picks out of thin air. I mean, people don't get on Howie Roseman. Well, maybe they do in Philadelphia, who wasn't worth a crap as a general manager for years for the Vikings. But then they won the Super Bowl in 2018 with Nick Foles. And then they beat the hell out of the Chiefs 2 years ago. Howie Roseman has made his mistakes. I refuse to listen to the stuff about Brandon Beane, that he's such a poor GM. He's made great picks. I mean, if we go, you guys going to make me go and do a show and compare first round selections from who you think the top GMs are? It's a crapshoot. Go watch Moneyball. It's still on Netflix for a little bit. You'll see. Boy, you guys have gotten way ahead of me on comments. I'm working my way back up here. Oh, Fume Drummer in with a, got to get this up there, but got to get everything before it. My goodness, guys. You know, this is why I need a producer. If anybody's interested, call me, because Ronnie Delden in here with awesome. And you are awesome, sir, but thank you for being on the show. And then here, Fume Drummer, who is the best drummer that's ever been on this podcast, or probably any other Bills podcast. You can count on that. Is here with put this toward the Send Ralph to a Nighttime Home Game Fund. I want to see your in-stadium reaction to Highmark Under the Lights. You know, I would too, and I want to hear the stadium full. I've got to tell you how impressed I was. And listen, you're a musician. You know about this. You've been in rooms with a lot of reflective surface, and they can be boomy. And this stadium, the underside of the canopy that goes around the entire stadium, and by the way, that underside measures more than 1/3 of square feet of bare stainless steel or whatever it is. It's probably some alloy. It's corrugated. If you look at a cross section, it's like this corrugated panel business for strength. But it's reflective as hell. They actually have it underneath the shelters that are out on Abbott Road. And we were under one of those. I was just talking by myself, and it was like I was talking through a mic. And then you could hear this roar. It was just kind of hinting at it when we were at that game. But, guys, I'm here to tell you, September 17th, Thursday night, when the Lions come in there, this crowd is going to discover what this place sounds like. It will be the loudest place in football. And you know what? I'm going to actually do that because I'm going to tell Mrs. Ralph that this is being talked about. Mrs. Ralph somehow got me to the preseason opener of the stadium. I was amazed. I got to show you guys the book. I don't have it here handy. It's very cool. She does photo books, and she had all this stuff in there about it. But at any rate, let's move on here. Thank you so much, Fume. I appreciate that, brother. Black Cloud is your thoughts on players not liking the new turf. And do you think they'll fix the new grass in time before the season starts? Well, first of all, I have not heard any players talk about it. The only player I've heard talk about the grass is Josh Allen, and he loves it. I think there was some issues, and I saw this when we were at the first game, with a chunk of turf that had come up somewhere around the 40-yard line on the sort of end of the stadium. And certainly that's a concern. You've got to get that up. But I'd rather see turf giving way than not giving it all and tearing somebody's knee, which is giving way. And as far as that goes, you know, I'm sure this is a brand new field. There's what, 300 by, or basically 100 yards, 120 yards with the end zone by the 54-yard width, 53 and change. That's a lot of area. There's probably some areas that are going to get kicked up in the middle. They're getting it fixed, and it's growing in. It's been in since last, basically, end of summer. There actually was this spring even, wasn't it? So, give it a chance. It's going to be fine on the turf. And the only comment I heard is Josh Allen clearly indicating that, yeah, we play on turf and we play on grass. And he said, even when we practice on the turf at the AdPro Sports Training Center, their own practice turf, he could feel it the next day where he does not feel grass. And he said if he could snap his fingers, every single place in the league would be grass. But imagine what the change is now. If it was a higher home game season like last year was with 9 home games and 8 away, this season, regrettably, with the new stadium, it's 8 home games and 9 away. But 8 more games that would have been on turf aren't. That's a hell of a difference, guys. It really is. And I think that it's moving towards that, what the World Cup and FIFA did with converting some of these stadiums to grass. And yes, they're able to come in and throw sod over the top and call it grass and then get rid of it. The Bills, in order to put this grass field in and have it last into perpetuity, of course, have some 700 miles of tubing beneath the field that will prevent it from freezing, that work on the aeration of it, the hydration of it, and so forth. And that's what's going to be necessary in an NFL stadium, especially those those in the north. So I definitely believe that the turf is fine. And again, I haven't heard any players talking about not liking it. I've only heard Josh talk about liking it. Josh, of course, is going to toe the company line. They may well be saying that. Who knows? What we got here next? Regarding the turf, apparently they hired the same company out of Pennsylvania with the worst reputation for carrying the Steelers turf. I don't get it. Well, that place has done a lot of different stadiums, quite frankly. And I don't know. Listen, this is the information age. We're going to find hater posts about anything we can possibly imagine, and there's going to be somebody that hates it. I think the field's going to be fine. I mean, you had an entire football game on it, and there was one spot that I saw guys out trying to take care of in between. It's going to be guys. It's going to be fine. Well, joke, yeah, they definitely dropped the ball on it. If it doesn't get fixed soon, it could have the horrific effect on the players. I wonder how many players will get injured due to this season. Come on, guys. Seriously? Are you really saying this? Did you really just comment that? How many guys are going to get injured on the grass? Has there been any talk at all about injury? The problem with turf and why it causes injuries is because when a foot is on it, it doesn't give way. You want it to give way because if it doesn't give way, something else is going to give way, and it's usually an ACL. Because how many non-contact injuries have we seen? And they happen on grass too. But I mean, it's a dangerous sport. The injury rate's 100%. But I do believe that the field is fine, and this is just another line of stuff that's just like unzipping and pee-peeing all over the stadium. And they got some things wrong, but I'm not going to say they got everything wrong. I just don't feeling that. Trevor Height's with us. Ralph, love the rants, missed most of the pod, but I like what we got this year. I do too. I do too. And I guess, Trevor, it's as good a time for me as any to say that my belief is that the Buffalo Bills, it wasn't that they didn't make a Super Bowl because Sean McDermott just wasn't able to push them over the wall. They didn't make a Super Bowl because Sean McDermott was standing on their shoulders with the weight he placed on this team. And I think that weight and that rigidity of his coaching style that was developed over season after season of success when he started out as an unknown, essentially, made the playoffs, broke a 17-year playoff drought, and at that point he's basically saying, wow, this worked. I've never been a head coach before. This is how I'm going to do it. And thus, the process was born. The process was born. And what we ended up with was years of the process. And the process was great until it got too powerful and too rigid and too inflexible. And you had crap like 13 seconds happening. And that's exactly what happened. In fact, I know most of you have heard this, but I'm going to say it again. McDermott was like Moses. Moses was able to lead the Hebrews out of the desert, out of bondage. McDermott led the Bills out of the drought. But Moses couldn't lead the Hebrews into the land of milk and honey because he couldn't cross the River Jordan with them. That took, of all people, Joshua. And I think there's a parallel to that's absolutely true. And, you know, as far as the opinions go on McDermott, yeah, a lot of people thought he was the one getting there. I think it was his weight. I think he had his hands all over the offense last season, trying to protect his defense. It no longer had Hyde and Poyer in the back. And couldn't stop the run. And how do you protect the defense like that? Well, you go out and run the ball 52% of the time, second only to the Ravens. You do it with James Cook so you get the rushing title. You do it with a good offensive line so you get the overall rushing title, running for more yards than anybody in the league did. And what does that equate to? Well, that equates to longer drives and fewer drives, which is the problem I had with, I mentioned this earlier, I think I got off the topic, that Joe Marino and Bruce Nolan bring on this graphic that the Bills' number of offensive drives per game had dropped from 10.8 to 10.0 in this last season. And okay, what does that actually mean? And they were talking about it from a standpoint, well, if you have fewer drives for your quarterback, there's less chances of making a mistake. But Josh Allen had just come off the most mistake-free year he'd had in 24, so that doesn't make sense. And the reason, and of course they didn't attach time of possession to this stat at all, so the number of drives per game standing on its own is rather meaningless in a sense in and of itself. But the fact is that you have fewer drives when you're running the ball like that because you're eating more time. You have extended drives. You're going down and scoring, and I just didn't buy it. But it's moreover about the fact that McDermott was protecting his defense and having the offense play in a certain way in order to protect that defense. And that's why it had to end. And now it's a different situation where you've got a head coach who's got powerful, brilliant offensive and defensive coordinators on this team. He's letting them do their thing. He's not stepping all over it. He's just kind of creating the atmosphere and the feel for this to be cool. And I think he's pulling that off. And put the ball down. It's just about playing football, not worrying about what just happened, and just jumping into it next. And his best thing he said in his introductory press conference was the fact that, hey, we don't got to play them. They got to play us. They're going to play Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. And just try that attitude when you go into this Houston game, rather than worrying about the Bills getting trounced. I'm over people worrying about this team, especially when there's nothing to worry about right now. We're talking about a couple of position groups, but every team in the league has something like that. Don't be a Debbie Downer. And those of you who know what Debbie stands for. I told Del Reed this on his podcast back on Father's Day weekend, and he learned and saw and understood. Because a Debbie Downer, that's not using a girl's name in a derogatory way. It's an acronym. DEBBIE. It's Drought Enhanced Buffalo Bills Insecurity Effect. And I will jump hard on it when I see it in this show. Let justice be done, though the heavens fall. When this team wins the Super Bowl, it's going to be such a release of pain, and it's the pain that the fan base has built up, which must, in any clear argument, exceed that which any other fan base has endured. When we win that Super Bowl, the release of that will be nothing like the NFL has ever seen. And if I need to, Fume Drummer, I'll be buying a horn full of Labatt's, maybe with that $10 on Delaware Avenue for the parade. Empire State Building was built in 1 year and 30 days. And your point. That was like then. This is a very complex building with a lot of systems and so forth. It even has an 18,000 square foot separate building. It's the entire brains of the facility. I do not know how far below grade the big house is in Michigan. That's a great question, actually. Fume Drummer is saying, back in the early 70s, the stadium was supposed to be a dome in the northern Buffalo suburbs. At the last minute, Erie County switched to Orchard Park and lost in a court battle over the change. That is absolutely correct. You can go back and read about that. And that's how we got the stadium that just was leveled. I love and hate the Nickel City /Lions uniforms. Thank you for the Lions reference. The Detroit connection is strong with the founder, Ralph Wilson. It's nostalgic. And a lot of people don't recognize that, Fume, and you do. I know this also. Of course, when the Bills were formed on October 28th, 1959, it was only after Ralph Wilson had tried to be a part owner of his own Detroit Lions, because he's from Grosse Ile, right here in on the water, southeast of here, down near Detroit. But he couldn't do that. He was thinking of actually Miami, who wouldn't back at that time. But the city of Miami and Dade County would not deal with him on doing anything with the Orange Bowl. Yes, it was in existence at that time. Subsequently was refurbished. Of course, the Dolphins played in there starting in 1966. But the Bills then were formed in October 28th, 1959. I was 83 days old, to date myself. And, you know, certainly there's a Detroit heritage there. And the instant I saw the Nickel City uniforms, it just reminded me of the gray uniforms that are a bit lighter that the Lions came out with and played, I believe, for the first time in a Thanksgiving Day game in those years back. And it's got to be some time now, actually, at least like 7, 8, 9 years. Dumpster fire in Lackawanna. I like the reference, Steve. Yes, that's, I think I used Cheektowaga when I was on Del Reed's show. And he called me out that Cheektowaga people might not like that. Thanks very much for that. The new helmet's backside is dumb. And the concept looks like the original Seahawks helmet. What's the point? No one is dying to buy a new replica helmet. Well, it's the same greed that essentially that is overtaking the NFL in general, that as Roger Goodell wanting to have the league all over the world. You can't do that. You can't make teams travel like that. What he needs to do, though, and this would be his opportunity to do it, is you need to create a farm league for talent so you could train quarterbacks in this professional league and run the damn thing in Europe and Asia. Go ahead. Have guys fly farther. Do that. Run the season on a different sort of surface of the calendar that the NFL runs on. But frankly, this crap is sending guys to Australia to play a ball game. Come on, what are we doing? What are we doing? You know, you talk about integrity in the Shield and wanting to make the game fair and so forth, and you're having teams travel like this? And yes, they get a week off thereafter. But maybe you didn't want your bye week so early because you had to do that. Will you invite Arthur Moats for an episode this season? I found him fascinating. Yes, Arthur, I'm in discussion with his brand manager as we speak, and he will be here. And Fume, since you weren't here earlier, I will let you know that I have, and to anybody else that wasn't here, Nick Davidoff, author of Collision Low Crossers, where he spent an entire year inside the New York Jets. He's a Pulitzer winner, runner-up. He was the runner-up for the Literary Sports Book Award. The book is amazing. I've read it 4 times, and I'll probably read it again. But I'm going to have Nick on the show here in the next couple of weeks. And if some of you guys didn't hear this, he has a lot in the book about Jim Leonhard, who was a safety with the Jets under Rex Ryan. He had come from the Ravens with Rex Ryan prior to, or after actually, he was with the Bills as an undrafted free agent. We remember Jim Leonhard from back then. That's the connection. And it will be very cool to have him on the show. That's going to be coming up. And Norm, the Bills fan, is asking, what's your schedule for the season? Yeah, Wednesday nights we're doing. Wednesday nights live are happening. I was going to have on, and he might have tried to come on, but I messed it up. John Green, a writer from Bills SI. We will get him on again, definitely. For the season, we're doing pregame, we're doing postgame, and we're doing in the game. I'm actually going to be giving you, and I am currently talking with a couple of the guys who might act as the analyst in the booth, but we're going to be giving you a radio call style presentation of the game. And of course, you could listen to it, certainly, or if you're watching the game, what we're going to do is have a game clock and the scores on our screen here, and we're going to set it up such that you will be able to sync up with us in terms of this is the game time remaining. We've got 12 minutes and 40 seconds in the first quarter. And once we're on, we stay on that. And we're going to be doing the game call during the game, giving you actually what the Bills radio network, and the voice of the Buffalo Bills, who is currently not Van Miller, but I'm going to do my best to emulate Van Miller in that. And we will be calling the games here on the Ralph Rant and then finishing that with our post-game show. So you're going to start off with your coffee and toast and bacon and eggs on Sunday mornings. We're going to go through the entire day, through your snacks, and then we're going to get to where you're like getting ready to heat up the sauce or put on the steaks when we do our post-game show. And we will be here for that all season. As I've told many of you, my dream is to be the radio voice of the Buffalo Bills. And this is one way to do it. So that's how we're going to start off doing that this season. It pains me, Woke's joke says, that Bean brought in guys like, okay, that was an old comment. I don't know how we got there. Set out the schedule so the fans can tune in. We will do that, and I'm going to go ahead and post that on YouTube, and we're going to have definitely the Wednesday night. That's a steady one. Of course, we will do the pregame, in-game, and post-game shows, and we will probably do another guest show during the week, every week, and then I will also do another midweek show on my opinion of what's going on with the Bills at that particular time. So you're going to have game day with us, and then certainly at least 3 times a week other than that, and that's what we'll be doing this season. And Norm, thanks for asking about that. And you, of course, if you go ahead and subscribe to the channel and hit notifications, you'll know whenever that's coming up. Norm, the Bills fan, Bean should be canned for all his draft bust. Oh, nonsense. I think he's better or as good as Howie Roseman, and Howie Roseman's won 2 Super Bowls. Beans are coming. Believe me, they're coming. Rex Ryan said in an interview that Jim Leonard is one of the league's best-kept secrets and is going to be a star. Hope he's right. I hope our D kicks butt this season. Yeah, hey, Jimmy Jam 1980s, good to have you on the show. And yes, that is definitely the case. And the only worry about Jim Leonard is that he will leave to become a head coach. But it'll be interesting because there's been the push on offensive-minded head coaches, although Mike McDonald is defensive and he just won the Super Bowl. And, of course, for that matter, Mike Vrabel was a defensive coach and was the loser in the Super Bowl. But I think the idea of offensive coaches has become popular, and Jim Leonard. I think Jim Leonard wants to develop his craft in this defense for a few years, rather than just jumping into something. But yes, certainly, and I hope to. And we'll be talking about Jim Leonard when I do get Nick Davidoff on the show, and we talk about his year with the Jets and his writing Collision Low Crossers. Guys, go and pick up that book in the meantime if you can. Just grab it even on Amazon, or if you're going to look at it on Kindle or whatever. It is such a great read. I highly recommend it. Not sold on Jim Leonard. Well, you got to get his name right to start off with. It's Leonhard. Show me, prove it. First, stop anointing him as the next Belichick. I don't know. His background is better than the next Belichick. I mean, I'm not anointing him. I'm giving you facts about when he was with the Jets and basically coached the back end of the defense, had pages full of notes, went to Wisconsin, had a historically successful and aggressive and ferocious defense there, and went to Denver and was their pass game coordinator there. He's come from the school of Rex Ryan defensive coaching. There's reason to anoint him. And again, the name is Leonhard, and I go ahead and emphasize the hard. Too many alpha males in one room doesn't usually end well. True enough. I'll say one thing. If we dominate this year, it will definitely be earned because we have a very tough schedule. Yes, it is. And so do the Patriots, fortunately. I don't think much of the Jets. I don't see how much longer Aaron Glenn can last at the Jets. We'll see what they do this year. Maybe Geno can help them win a few games. Old Stadium had great character. $50 for hot dogs. Erie County Fair ripoff 2.0. Yeah, I haven't been to the ECF in a while, but I hear you and believe you on that. Jam agrees. Schedule's tough this season with the coaches' changes. Could go pear-shaped. Got to believe. Yes, we do have to believe. We had Rex Ryan, and we did indeed. I wonder if our head coach can cut players to get to the 53-man roster. Bean has total say in, or does Bean have total say in the 53-man roster? Bean doesn't have any say on the 53-man roster. I mean, only to the extent that there might be some cap implication, but we don't know anything about that. No, it is the coaching staff and, the guy that's got to take this team out onto the field, Joe Brady, will be making the calls on this. How do you see the secondary? Well, I think we're going to be seeing a lot of different things. We talked earlier about the fact that the Bills' inside linebacker core might be a little bit inexperienced or tough for coverage. But, we might see, a one high safety, middle of the field closed type of thing from the Bills with some hybrid players in the intermediate side. I don't think the inside linebackers are going to be exposed perhaps as much as people think. And the defense is decidedly younger and faster. There's no question about that. I think we're going to be seeing people flow to the football. It's going to look different. It is going to look different. I believe that. And I don't think we can anoint Jim Leonard yet. Apparently, I'm being accused of doing so, but after all, I am the Ralph, and I know. Yeah, who makes the calls? Bean or Brady on final cuts? It's certainly not Bean. Bean's not a coach of this team. And, a lot of sentimental players and overdrafted players that should be long gone. I don't know if we've got a lot of overdrafted and a lot of sentimental. Certainly, I guess sentimental, you want to talk about DeMar maybe. But don't be a Debbie Downer, though, on the Bills. And, of course, Debbie is not to insult you with a girl's name, although I love that name for a girl. But it's an acronym, DEBBIE, and that is Drought Enhanced Buffalo Bills Insecurity Effect. I would think the coaching staff has some say in the roster decision. Hey, Undo 7, you're in the house? Yeah, you think? Thank you for that. Our inability to stop the run never hurt us in big games. Yeah, because we couldn't get a pass rush. I mean, I don't even know what that means. Got to sell that hat online, Ralph. Yes. Thanks, Bumper. And I'm talking about doing that and also getting the T-shirts out. I'm much closer to that now. I've been doing a lot of things with this channel lately, and a lot of new stuff going on. But thank you for that note, because I will keep that in mind and actually do that. A Merlin hat. Well, actually, thank you for that. I like that better than referring to it as a fez. It's basically a round of fabric on the top, or an oval, with a surround that's sewn right in the very back. And actually, I was a musician, and I still am, but this is quite similar to the type of hat that Joe Satriani wore a lot, except he didn't have his NFL team hugely emblazoned on it. But thank you for that. I like the Merlin hat idea. What dumpster in Lackawanna did they find those awful gray uniforms? Didn't they learn from last year? Perhaps these nickel city uniforms are actually the ones that got soot on them from that fire. Yeah, I have my really sore spots with what the Bills have done. Both the uniform alterations and this video board in the new stadium, I really have a hard time with. Dub Godson is in the house. Teams ain't going to know what to expect what Jim Leonard's going to do. That's the fun part. Pure dog mentality. Dogs of war, actually. dogs of war. Because this is an aggressive defense. This is different than what we've had before. Our defense under McDermott was attempting to prevent things from happening. This defense is not so concerned with what is trying to be done to them. They are concerned with what they are trying to do to the opposing offense. And this is Leonard's philosophy. So yeah, dog mentality, apex predators. That's what it's about. They asked C.J. Gardner-Johnson, why did Jim want you to come here? Because he wants me to be mean. They want attitude. They want nasty. And that's what this team has become. It's no more of Sean McDermott saying, well, it's hard to win in the NFL and you've got to earn the right to win all week. No, it's attitude. They're going to play us. They're going to play us. And guys, some people say this game is entirely about talent or it's entirely about scheme or it's entirely about culture or it's entirely about a combination of all of them. But all these guys are apex predators in this league. They're all unreal athletes. They all have something special on them. Rex Ryan said it is harder to get in the NFL than it is to win the lottery. So understand that all these guys are really, really good. What differentiates these teams is attitude. It's attitude. I'm telling you. This is why Joe Brady's going to be successful with this team. It's not because he's such a great offensive mind or a super head coach. He's already said, I don't have a head coaching manual. I'm just getting up in the morning and doing what I think needs to be done. But he's bringing this organization together. That's what's going on. There's an attitude on this team. And this is entirely about attitude. As Dub Gotson said, yes, we believe. Jimmy Jam, hopefully we can get up early on the Texans force Stroud to have to pass unleash or pass rush and see him choke. And I'm expecting the Bills to harass him pretty heavily. I think it's going to be quite something to see. And we will be calling the game here. If you got in late, our new schedule does include big game day things. We're doing a pregame presentation. We'll talk about everything from weather to inactives to what the other team looks like. We'll go through a normal pregame. And, of course, we will do our postgame shows like we have with our reactions and my bitching as I'm wont to do. But the other thing that we're doing new is I'm going to be calling the games. We're going to have live streams of the games where I will be essentially playing the part of Van Miller, telling you what's going on. You can listen to it and you will be able to understand and listen to the game as if on radio. If you are watching the Bills game, we're going to set it up to where we have a clock and scores and so forth, where you can sync exactly to our clock and you can be basically watching the game just like we are, and actually talking with a couple of guys who might want to be the booth analyst or color analyst, as it's been called at times, so I don't have to talk for 6 hours straight. But if that's what it takes, I'm going to do it. Great news, Ralph, about the comments. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'm back screen, Ralph. He's been here for a while, and I've got to find out how to get him on the stage here. I don't want to end the stream. That's John. He's here. Well, you know what? We're 2 hours into it, and I think he's been sitting here for a while. I'm going to figure out how to do this. We're going to just ask real quick how to bring in guests. Waiting backstage, add to stream, hover over guest video tile and backstage. How do I get to backstage? Oh,
He's
there he
getting
is.
to my-
He's here.
Oh.
There he is. Guys, John Green, SI, Bills SI writer, is with us tonight. And I see the pine ceiling I've heard so much about. And John, welcome into the show. Got his comment there. I think we have you breaking up here a little bit. I love the picture, but I've got you
Ralph,
sort of.
thanks for having me. I might
There you are.
have to pop back out and then come back.
Okay, that's fine.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. You need to jump out and come back
Okay.
in.
Yes, because I'm not on my computer right now. I'm just on my phone. So
okay.
let me hop back up. Okay. I'll give me maybe 2 or 3 minutes and then I'll hop on from my laptop.
You're all good, brother. It's great.
All right. Sorry about that. I'll be right in.
Oh, you're good.
All right.
So,
All right.
guys, yes, that's John Green. He's a writer for Bills SI. You can find him on Twitter. I really like his writing style. I saw some of the pieces he'd done on the Bills. He's concerned with the things that I like to be concerned with as opposed to others that aren't as stats-oriented, perhaps, as some writers. We're going to have him back here in a moment. We've been going for a while here. I think we're just going to keep it going. A lot of you guys are here with me. You've gotten in here late, and I appreciate you hanging out. We still have sort of the same number running here in the room since we got started. And again, if you're new here tonight, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Subscribe to the channel. Become part of the Ralph Rant for the entire season. And thank you so much. We're thrilled by this. Just real quick, my backstory with this channel is that it was a music channel that guys like Fume Drummer would have been into. And it had 48 subscribers or whatever. And then 8 years ago, 2 weeks after Josh Allen was drafted, I did a show where I predicted Josh Allen's greatness. And that's the only show I did. It got a bunch of views, but I really didn't know what I was doing with YouTube and didn't do anything further. But then I came back, and last year, basically in middle of the preseason, not the preseason, the offseason. So it's been a bit over a year now, but started back up. And since we've gotten a ton of subscribers, a lot of great regulars, we're talking about the Bills every week and in some way, shape, or form. And very much appreciate everybody that's come aboard. If you are new to the channel tonight, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Become part of the channel. We've got a lot of things going on this season for content we'll present. And what a year for it is. New coaching staff, Josh Allen in his 9th year. This is going to be awesome. And I do think Josh is just hitting his prime. I've never seen Bills receivers open like I saw them in the game versus Carolina. And people will say, oh, it's Carolina and it's Cleveland that they played. You know, crap. These are NFL teams. And these guys are all good. And I've never seen receivers so wide open as I saw at the start of that game when the Bills ones were out on offense. Let's keep on moving here. Hamlin should be cut. Hancock take a spot. We need dogs on the back end. You know, Dub, I hear that. I do. And, you know, the question before whether it's Hancock or Geno Stone. And I almost think it could be Hancock that would be cut because I think the Bills on defense especially, but I think the whole team have taken on the attitude that we want dogs in these positions. We want nasty dudes. That's why we got C.J. Gardner-Johnson. I mean, Cole Bishop is going to be a prick out on that field. And definitely a lot of the other defenders, the attitude, and DJ Moore, for example. So there's an attitude of nasty on this team. Alec Anderson getting the starting guard job on the left side. He's got a mean streak to him, and that's what these Bills are after. They're after an attitude with this team. And even though Hamlin's around the ball a lot, I do think Geno Stone stays. Hancock will be there, but Hancock is not even listed as a safety at this point. As I stated earlier, the Bills have 9 guys listed as corners. They've got 6 listed as safeties, and they've got 3 that are just listed as defensive backs. And so this is a different story with how they're viewing players, and we've got hybrid players. One of those 3 that are listed as a defensive back is Jordan Hancock. Hamlin's listed as one of the safeties. I mean, Toriano Pride Jr. is another. He's a corner. But I think you have to look at the group, the back end of the Bills defense. And when you make your roster projections, I don't think you make them so much based on, how many of this are they going to keep or how many of that are they going to keep. I think you have to talk more about guys. And you're going to see guys like Jalen Kilgore and Kenai Walker and certainly Jordan Hancock and Cole Bishop and CJGJ. They are after apex predators who are like trembling with hostility at the snap of the ball. And it's not what you have seen from the Bills defense in years. Because we were trying to prevent other teams from having success. We weren't trying to impose our will on opposing offenses. And that is what we have going on now. And guys, we have now added to the show Mr. John Green, Bills SI. You can catch his stuff on X. And he also has his material out on Medium. It's a great app to get, and he writes a lot of great stuff about the Bills. We don't agree on anything, and how could I possibly have him on the show otherwise? But John, welcome in.
Thanks for having me, Ralph. I'm sorry for the delay. Like I said, I was on another podcast, and I'm never usually on any podcast, so it was pretty nice to be joined by, it was a Sports Avenue Twisted podcast. You can check out that episode. It'll be out on Friday, I believe. But I love talking ball, so I was glad to hop on. And then I was trying to hurry up, and I would have been on sooner, but for some reason the episode, which it was a pre-recorded, it wasn't live, so it needed to upload or whatever. And apparently my internet is a little bit slow, so it took a while. So we were just chatting off screen, me and the other fellas, and I was waiting for the upload to happen before I left. So that's why I was a little bit late. So I'm sorry about that.
You're all good. Well, we've got, I think, about 25 in the house right now, a lot of our Ralph Rant regulars. And I'm sure they'll be interested in hearing your takes on some of this stuff. I got to see where we were in the comments. Here was from Dub Gotson. Hamlin should be cut. Hancock, take his spot. We need dogs in the back end. And I mean, Hamlin's been around the ball a lot, John, in the preseason here. He doesn't quite strike me as having the sort of the dog attitude, if you could even say that with as much as he's been around the ball. But what do you think about that?
I can agree with that. I would say he's more of a technician than someone who likes to get his nose in there and get dirty a little bit. So I agree with that. But with him being a technician, like you said, he's been around the ball. So he does find himself in the right place at the right time. Is he always making plays on the ball? No, but when you get a tip ball like he did against Cleveland, he was right there to make the play, right? So that's why he's stuck around in the league, even all the unfortunate things that he's gone through. He is a very cerebral player. He's a dependable player. He's just not somebody that's going to be flashy or make a lot of big time hits or a lot of plays that, you'd like to see from, some of the top safeties in the league. I think he could honestly be cut. I don't know if he will. So maybe they'll get their wish. A player that I'm a little bit interested in, and maybe it's just me, to Corey Couch, who got an interception against Cleveland as well.
Yes.
I think he, on the other hand, does have that dog mentality. He was a great player at the University of Miami. He went undrafted. So I think he's got that chip on his shoulder from a few years ago. And he's been on the practice squad. He's kind of been hanging around. He's versatile, much like Hancock is. He can play a little bit of outside. He can play a little bit of inside on nickel. He can play at safety, which is where he got that interception against Cleveland, was at safety, at deep safety. And Jim Leonard even talked about him during his Monday press conference, where he was saying in order for him to make the team, that's what he has to do. He has to be that Swiss Army knife. He has to be able to wear a lot of hats. And so far, he actually has been pretty steady. He's not getting those reps like Hamlin and Geno Stone, but those reps don't always mean things. Guys that are the backup that are, playing in the preseason games can still be cut, regardless of if, the reps that they're getting or not, and they can still be cut in favor of those younger guys. So that's a position I'm interested to see how it shakes out in this Steelers game. Who's playing, who's not. Is Hamlin on the sideline? If he's on the sideline, then I assume that means he's probably made the team. But I don't know. We'll see how it goes.
Well, one of the things I was mentioning earlier to the group here, John, was the fact that it's interesting if you look at the Bills' depth chart. And, of course, we've looked at it closely enough to say, okay, AA is our new starting left guard because we see what's been stated. So if we're going to believe that, we believe other things. And what is really interesting to me is that the Bills list 6 people as safeties on the roster currently.
Yep.
They list 9 as corners, but they have another 3 that are listed as defensive backs, and those happen to be Jordan Hancock, Sam Franklin, of course, who's the special teams monster, and your very Corey Couch. And the fact that those 3 are listed as that tells me that maybe with the sub packages that Leonard is planning, and perhaps also just the attitude he's after, that these guys listed as defensive backs as opposed to the other. It interests me that they're that, and they're this hybrid player they're talking about, and guys that I think we might see on the 53. I think we just lost your audio. And I think the other point I was making with the fact that we've got, I mean, if we're going to trust the Bills.
Can you hear me
back there? Yes, I can now. You're good.
Sorry,
that may have even been me with these this faulty headphone input. But the other thing, if we're trusting the depth chart, nowhere on the depth chart do the letters NT appear. We don't see anybody listed as a nose tackle. And for those that have been screaming for the Bills to bring in a nose tackle, I continue to insist that the interior defensive line and also the outside linebackers will be actually swapping amongst those 5 positions throughout the course of a game, because the Bills have told us as much in the offseason that's the plan.
Yeah, like you said, I mean, just like you mentioned with the secondary, where people are going to be wearing a lot of hats and doing a few different things and not being – I even talked about this on the other show I was just on. Leonard, I feel, is going to be putting guys in positions where they're going to succeed. And I know that's a kind of a coach speak thing, because McDermott said that as well, but he often tried to fit the guys into the roles that he needed within his defense versus – just giving the guys assignments that he knows that they can do well. And that's where he's going to put them in those positions so that they can shine to their fullest. So the same thing goes for the defensive line, not just specifically pegging guys in to the nose tackle role. Although I will add that apparently Greg Gaines loves that role, so maybe he will take on a little bit more of that type of mentality in there on the defense line if he makes the team, which I think he might, which is interesting for a late addition like that.
Well, he's got the height, or actually he doesn't have the height for
exactly.
it,
That's what he said, right? He's like, I don't want to say I'm short. He said, I don't want to say I'm short, but I'm good with leverage. So versus a De'Aaron Walker who is 6'7", he's only about 6'1", I believe. So
precisely. I like that take.
Yeah, and just people are good at what they're good at. So if you can put them in those positions, then obviously they're going to perform better than if you're trying to put them in something that they're not comfortable doing. So that'll be a big thing to see how it works out this season, specifically in the regular season, because as we all know, the preseason is a different animal than the regular season. So
yeah, and he won't be showing anything, nor will he.
I don't want him to, right?
Exactly. And it'll be interesting to see, because what tomorrow night, what Pittsburgh's trying to do, and I actually earlier this evening before I started the show had to go check out Arthur Mote's show. And of course, as most of you know, Arthur's been a regular guest, and I've been a guest on his show on the Bills side of things, but he's also has a Patriots show, and they are talking about this defense that's got some dogs on it also. This will be an interesting challenge for the Bills tomorrow night. Certainly we will not see very, very few starters, if any, only where it's absolutely necessary. But we will be seeing Kyle Allen, baby.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I'm looking forward to that and seeing what the Bills do against this team. I think this might be, and Pittsburgh has actually been historically an interesting preseason opponent for the Bills, and giving them a time. And I think it's important that this happens, because unless the Bills are as deep as I was saying the other day, my goodness, there has to be a team in this preseason that's going to at least give them a little bit of adversity.
Yeah, I'm interested to see. Pittsburgh historically has always been a physical team, regardless of who's their coach. So be interested to see how McCarthy does, how the McCarthy ran Steelers look. But again, how much are you going to take away from a preseason setting? I don't know. But like I was writing, I'm writing an article tonight that should be out tomorrow before the game. Some of these guys are on the verge of cracking the roster, but that can teeter one way or the other in a preseason game. If they go out and have a horrible performance, then maybe the coaches second guess what they had been seeing all season, all preseason long. I'm not necessarily saying they should make a snap judgment like that, but that's just the nature of the beast. Sometimes in the NFL, it's what have you done for me lately? So even a week-to-week basis, if they falter this week against the Steelers, then they might not make the 53-man roster. So it is important for those reasons, for those types of players, even though fans sometimes might not get too excited about a preseason matchup, especially a third one. I always get up for them because it is a big moment for some of these guys. And Brady and Leonard even talked about it in their press conferences earlier this week. Brady's never even made it to this position, so he can't even imagine what these guys must feel like. And he knows that some of these guys might not ever even get a chance to play football again. So it's his job to give everything that he's got this week in preparation and practice, because he talked about even giving them walkthroughs that maybe they might not do otherwise. But he wants these guys to be as prepared as they can for this opportunity, so that even if they don't make the Bills roster, they might get an opportunity somewhere else with the 31 other franchises in NFL, or who knows, even a spring league. Maybe if they put up good enough tape and they don't make it, but they stick around, or the CFL. There's still a lot of football to be played, even if you don't make a 53-man roster in the NFL. And then you got the practice squad as well. So it's a big opportunity for a lot of these guys. And even if they don't continue their football career after this, it's still kind of like a Friday night, it's their moment. This is the most they're ever going to get to play in the NFL. So it's exciting to see for that reason alone. And Jim Leonard's actually got a very intimate relationship with this type of day. He's been cut before. He was an undrafted guy. It's not, he had to work for everything that he ever got. So he knows what it's like. He's seen a lot in his 10-year NFL career. He's seen guys come and go. So he knows that it's a delicate situation. So he's going to treat it the same way as Brady's approaching it. So it should make for a good game regardless,
I like these points, John, and what they lead to is one other thing we talked about earlier in the show was the NFL, of course, in their propensity to send teams over thousands of miles of ocean to go play in other countries, which I don't think is good for the league. But I think what the idea needs to become, which would be awesome for the league, is that the NFL truly needs a farm league. I mean, there are farm leagues in hockey and in baseball. I don't know how much in basketball because we have so many youngsters coming right out of school. But the fact that we have these farm leagues that allow players to develop, but they're developing both for sports that play, 82 games a year, 162? You're talking about teams that play 17 regular season games. The NFL, if anybody ever needed a farm league, a way to develop quarterbacks, I think it could really change. And I think the answer lies in playing in these cities where you've gotten it popular. Maybe in their wisdom, they have actually come up with this idea already. We're not going to play regular season games and have other NFL teams in other countries, even though Roger Goodell just said so. We're going to have a situation, truthfully, where we're going to end up with a farm league where guys can go play overseas in front of crowds that love them. We know it's a business model that can work, and we'll end up. And I would love to see nothing more than that, especially when we're talking about these guys who are sitting on the bubble, and this just can't be the last time they play football in their life.
Right. Speaking of overseas, I mean, I don't remember it too much because I was a bit young then, but the NFL Europe, that was kind of a good farm system. And now that the game has grown in popularity overseas, maybe that's something to consider other than just adding another 33rd franchise. Maybe try to consider some type of farm system over there where, that gives a little bit more attraction and a little bit more spread of the game, but without taking away from the main attraction of the NFL, which I never even thought about that really. But I mean, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, like Fred Jackson, Brian Moorman, some Bills players were in NFL Europe during that time way back in the day. So it's not as if it wasn't a useful tool. It just wasn't as big back then for whatever reason. It just didn't, I don't think it was as ran as well or as effectively as it could. And now that they're trying to push so hard to have a presence overseas, maybe they should rethink it and twist it, which I never thought about this, but it makes a ton of sense to grow the game even further over there, but also grow the game over here by developing them over there like they used to in NFL Europe. And then when they're ready, and go. And I think that's actually an interesting thing. Or like you're saying, but with these spring leagues, they're kind of trying to take over these cities now, so we'll see unless they really work together to create a farm system over here, you know what I mean? It's interesting. And then the college game now with the NIL situation is kind of taking away from some of the development. So I think it's definitely something that they need to look into further, because they're not 32 starting NFL quarterbacks. There are, but they're not. You know what I mean?
And what would the league be like if you had basically 70% of the league with quarterbacks that were within a stone's throw of ability of a Josh Allen, a Patrick Mahomes, a Joe Burrow, a Lamar Jackson? What if you had 4 of each of those in the league? What would this league look like?
Right, exactly. And they're all about putting out a good product, right? So, I mean, it's definitely something that they need to think about, because if you have more competitive players at the quarterback position, that's just going to raise the level of every team, and it's just going to create even greater. It's all about money, right? So that's just going to create a better product and more interest and more money for Mr. Goodell. So I think it's something that he needs to think about seriously, or somebody, because I don't think that the spring leagues around right now are necessarily ran with that in mind. They're also just with money in mind, in my opinion. It's not necessarily to get, I mean, yes, that's their pitch to get you to the NFL, but is it really with the intent of getting these guys better, or is it just putting another product on the field?
You need to have like a 30% of the NFL salaries existent in this thing, in which would attract the talent to do it rather than going to the CFL, rather than looking at NIL, like we've got players returning to college now. What, 16 of them is the report just came out?
Did it come out?
Yes,
and that's just opening a can of worms right there. I mean, what are we doing, to be honest?
And so why don't we instead just go ahead and put the money into this farm NFL league, because it's not only going to develop the cornerbacks. What's it going to do? It's going to develop defenses. When you have quarterbacks that are that good, you're going to have a situation where you've got defensive backs learning what they have. Boy, I heard the train horn back there. That's nice.
Sorry. Well, hey, I live right near a train track, so I guess it works though, right?
It sounded like the stadium to me, brother.
There
it was
you
great.
go.
Sir down. It's Sir down.
There we go.
I think
like
that's definitely a thing that needs to happen, where you've got developing quarterbacks, but the quarterbacks have been what has developed the rest of the league. How our offenses have developed, how defenses have gotten better. Basically the man match type of situations you've got going on with simpler defenses in the NFL that are relying on faster and younger players, like the Bills are actually doing. What could that do to the league if you had that? And I think that's what Goodell really needs to look at. Check. I'm not sure I lost your audio.
Oh, can you hear me now?
I got you now.
I think I muted myself so the train horn wasn't so pronounced.
Oh, no, don't leave the train horn in, my brother. Leave the train horn in. Guys, I got to let you know that John and I essentially just met up recently, and we were both involved in a lot of things when we started talking, so it got going slowly. And to be honest with you, last night we got together on these very same airwaves, unrecorded, and we ended up talking Bills for 3 hours, just testing out if the gear all worked and everything was good. So thank you so much for all being here this evening. I think we've got a few in the house, definitely right now. We've not gotten into any comments recently. We've had some great ones tonight, and I think we need to look at a few more.
Okay.
Let's see. Boy, I went through them so quickly here. Here we go. Fume drummers in the house. John, this is the best drummer that has ever graced the airwaves of the Ralph Rant.
All right.
He and I would be in a band together if we lived nearby, for sure.
I love it.
And he states, I hope Leonard's defense plays as savage as he did when he played for the Bills. Attack, attack, attack. And that's what it is. And if you go back and look at what he did in Wisconsin, that's what was phenomenal about him. Those defenses were ferocious.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't even need to be that talented, because there was an attitude on these defenses that intimidated. And I'm sorry, you could say football is about this, that, or anything else. The game of football is about one group of men intimidating another.
Yeah. It's definitely a huge factor, that's for sure. I mean, you can't deny that fact. It's probably a third or a fourth of the game, just the mentality you have and the demeanor that you portray on the field, because that can change a lot of dynamics. And like we said before, confidence is a hell of a drug. So if you can go on the field confident in knowing what your assignments are and being able to play freely, it definitely changes it and allows you to attack. So it's not just having that mentality, but also having the tools, which is having a simplified defense or having a coach like Leonard who is able to present it to his players in a certain way so that they understand what they need to do on a down-to-down basis in order to achieve what is being called on that specific play and what is being asked of from Leonard himself. So I full-heartedly believe that it will be an attack style defense, but for those reasons, not just for the mentality, but for how Leonard presents things to his players to allow them to play freely in order to be able to attack.
And I think this is a good point to make at this time, because I saw Pete Carmichael Jr. wearing a light hoodie on the practice field that stated quite simply, "Put the ball down."
Okay, cool.
And this has become Brady's mantra. And put the ball down. And guys, I highly recommend you go out and check out Mitch Morse's channel. And he and his partner, who I don't know the guy's name, have Joe Brady on the show.
I didn't get to check it out, but
they talk about Joe Brady's mantra of "put the ball down," which, and he states that you just can't say it one time. You've got to really enforce it and live by it.
You got to live it.
What he's teaching his players is that, if you make a mistake, it's okay. And this is something throughout the NFL, because this is what intimidation is. It's remembering what just happened and worrying about it the next play. And what Joe is trying to do is to completely get away from that and saying, put the ball down. This is this play. And that is what he's talking about with the attitude of this team. And I think this team has been capable of winning 6 or 7 Super Bowls in a row were conditions right. And the issue has been that the team has not been able to recover at critical spots when it feels intimidated. And I think this is precisely what Joe Brady is seen as being a member of the coaching staff of this team, and is now making the change of, hey, put the ball down. Forget about the last play. And when you use the term dogs on defense, of course, we've talked about dogs. We've got the dog pound in Cleveland. We talked about dogs on the defensive teams, of guys that play like dogs or who let the dogs out. There are so many references. But when we do talk about dogs, and you and I both have pets and we know about this, that dogs, they don't remember the last bit. They're in the present. And that's what I think they are after with this team, both on the offensive and defensive sides. Be completely in the present, which is why they call it presence, and not be thinking about just what happened, what just happened, or thinking about what may
happen. Right.
Just think about the absolute now. And I think this is an essence of NFL football that gets lost in the extreme situations of scheme and trying to understand the difference between palms and sky or cloud in defensive coverages and so forth. All of that is the necessary complexity of the professional game.
Right.
But I think it still comes down to intimidating the other team. And I think this is what Joe Brady is concentrating on and what he's talking about and how he's trying to form this team as it rockets towards its opener down in Houston.
Yeah, I think they may be just using different wordage, but vibes, right? That's what it's how they portray themselves, how they feel. It's flipped from the past where maybe we were, but I think it's more of they've been beaten down so many times that they, after a few times, that kind of got to them mentally, and it's hard to shake that. But now that there's a breath of a little bit of fresh air with some new guys, even though Brady was the offensive coordinator, I mean, there's a different feeling. So that so far in the preseason, I think you can see it. and which I never talked. Yeah, and I never took this, but I think we talked about it off screen last night. Where now that Joe Brady's down on the sideline, his vibe can now rub off on the players more than it ever did when he was up in the booth. So that might, possibly pay dividends. We'll see. I mean, so far it feels like it is. And it kind of feels like with Leonard, he even said in his presser on Monday or Tuesday, one of the two, that he prefers to be on the sideline because sometimes he feels a little disconnected. Like there's a disconnect when you're up in the booth. And that's why he's always chosen to be down there, is because he can look a guy in the eye. He can see maybe what they need in that moment versus trying to figure things out just schematically by looking at things aerial. It's not all just schematics. Yes, it's a huge component, like you said, but part of it is knowing what a guy needs in a moment in order to get the best out of him in that specific situation, because the NFL is one of the most pressure cooked environments in anything, not just sports. So you need to be able to connect and see what's needed in the moment in order to get the job done. So I think having Brady down there and just having his vibes might change some things. So
I totally agree with that. And I think it definitely, against the videos I was doing basically back in October, and I felt the attitude of the team on the sideline was lacking. And I think that's the biggest thing. If you can point to anything that's tangible and visceral that the Bills are doing differently, because we've seen it already. This team just, and okay, all right, it was the Panthers. It's Bryce Young. He's a bust. Yes, they were a playoff team last year. Thank you. Mm-hmm. And yes, I did see what they did to the Jaguars the very next week. Go watch it if you didn't. Mm-hmm. And I sure, okay. And then the Cleveland Browns, okay. Deshaun Watson,
that situation.
Bust, I mean, all of that. But listen, they're all NFL players. Yep. There's only 32 teams, and a very tiny percentage of the best guys doing this get into this. Mm-hmm. So don't tell me how different the teams are, especially when we're talking about a situation of twos and threes out on the field. That if you're going to accept the definition that talent is such a big differentiator in the NFL, you've got to accept the fact that the talent will be more even in the twos and threes, and the fact that the teams, when they play each other like that, that will demonstrate if talent equals out far more of this intimidation and aggressive and attacking nature. And the Bills have been kicking the hell out of teams in the end of these games. Now, we're going to see with the Pittsburgh Steelers, who were a playoff team last year.
Another interesting. Yeah.
I mean, they're not the Panthers,
right?
And Mike McCarthy is there, and we will see. Mm-hmm. And I'm anxious to see, especially how this works out with the depth of these teams, because I think the depth of these teams, which I've seen great things from the Bills, and I did a video the other day basically talking about maybe the Bills' depth against the Browns was more impressive than the actual win. Mm-hmm. And if that's the case, and when we've got a 17-game regular season playing this sport, that the depth matters. Mm-hmm. And if you got guys like Mike Vrabel out there basically saying, our team's not that deep.
Not good.
I tell you what, I think the Bills, and this basically speaks to, I think, the strength of Brandon Beane, which I've had guys on this show already tonight basically say, get rid of Beane, he's a bum. I mean, all right, get rid of Howie Roseman then. Howie Roseman has general managed the Patriots to 2 Super Bowl titles in the last 8 years, right?
Yeah. So I know we talked about it last night off screen. I am not I wouldn't say I'm a Bean hater, but I'm not a diehard supporter of him. I think how everyone in any profession in anything, he has his strengths and he has his weaknesses. Um, is our roster as top heavy maybe as some of the other ones? No. But then you look at our depth, which might be just as important. That's also seems to be a strength, at least right now. And you need the depth. And like for instance, the offensive line. How often does he love to pluck a middle round offensive lineman and just stack them? You know what I mean? But the team has had a fairly solid offensive line, not the best, but it's always been pretty solid, especially in the run game. And a la James Cook last year winning the rushing title. So he has his strengths. He seems to also find defensive backs later in the draft well, like Christian Benford and possibly Jalen Kilgore now. But he's had some whiffs. And I think sometimes he might not attack free agency the right way. Oh, did I lose you?
No.
Oh.
I'm experimenting, like
okay.
I said, with some StreamYard production things. So
that's fine.
solo.
Okay, that's fine. So yeah, like I said, I think he has his strengths and weaknesses just as anybody does in anything. But depth definitely seems to be something that he focuses on too. It seems to be something that he's conscious of. He's worried about the depth. And I think we've always had it, to be honest. I think we've kind of been the team's been snake bitten about their injuries as of late. We had those years earlier, a few years ago, where the team was very healthy. But I think, like we talked about off screen, I think injuries are, something that you can't really control. Yes, you can do certain things to try to mitigate it, but overall, it's just a luck thing. So as long as you can stay healthy, then maybe depth doesn't matter. But if you need it, then yes. But then sometimes it's been depleted. The depth has been there is none, because even the depth players have been hurt. So it's a good thing to have, especially with the deeper practice squads now and able to elevate, especially veterans. So I think he's done a good job in that department. Like I said, I'm not a diehard supporter, but I wouldn't say I'm a hater. There are some other critiques that I could go on about, but overall, he has done a good job of adding depth to this team over the tenure that he's been here. And I think it's because it's something that he's heavily focused on. So,
well, I agree with that. I am the Ralph. I'm going to be more the Homer. This is precisely why you are on the screen with me, because I think it's a great balancing act for the thing. And while we're at it, John, why don't you just go ahead and tell everybody where they can find you on YouTube and on X, of course, and on Medium with your writing, and just tell them about what you're doing.
All right, yeah. So let me look specifically so that I don't screw it up. But I know on X, you can find me at @jgreen, so just like the color, @jgreen_PR Sports. You might be thinking that's weird, it has nothing to do with Bills, but it's from my prior time as a local news reporter in my area.
It's all Bills, believe me.
Yeah, oh yes, if you can't see this. I'm heavily 24/7 knee-deep in Bills now. So you can find me at @jgreen_PR Sports. I put all of my content there. But then also, I have also recently joined over to Blue Sky just to try to, get more eyes on my story. So let me see if I can pull it up, because I don't know it by heart. So hold on one second. You can find me over there as well it is @BillsMafia30.bluesky.social. So you can find me there. That as of now, that's really the two main platforms that I post to. I might dive into Instagram a little bit too. And then as far as YouTube, maybe there's some plans in the future for that. We'll see. I know we might have to wait to announce some of that stuff. But as far as all my written content and stuff, you can find me at those two locations. And as well as I have my own Bills publication over on Medium. You might not know what it is, but it's similar to Substack. It's just the same, and it is free. There are paid options, but I'm not asking anyone to do that, because I know people don't like to do that. All of my content is free over there. So in addition to my stuff over at Bills on SI, which you can Google and find all my articles over there, as well as other talented writers that are over there as well. My colleagues are great. So there's a lot of content that you should check out there. But my Medium page is Believe in Buffalo. So it's my own little spin and my own little publication. So in addition to my Bills on SI articles, I also write articles over there. And every Sunday, I've been doing it religiously since I've started it. I package all of my articles into a little segment or a little article called the Bills Blizzard. And every Sunday, either in the morning or the afternoon, or sometimes the evening, life happens, right? But every Sunday, all of my articles from both Medium and Bills on SI are packaged into those stories. And I also do a weekly roundup of a little bit of my personal life, as well as what's happening in Bills land. And then there's a whole gamut of all of my articles from the past week, which you can dive into. And so I think on Sundays pre-game, I'll try to get those out, especially, 1 o'clock games. I'll try my best to get those out 1 o'clock during the season. But all summer I've been doing it, and I've been keeping on top of it. So I think it's a good thing that people should check out. And like I said, Bills on SI, I have an article almost every day out, or multiple, like I'm working on right now, about some guys that are on the verge of cracking the roster and why the Pittsburgh game is so important, even if fans don't think it is, because it can, like I said, it can teeter one way or the other. So there's guys that are just about to make it, but if they go out and they lay an egg, well, it's a what have you done for me lately league. So we'll see. And maybe even if they don't make it for the Bills, they might make it elsewhere. So I hope I've been trying like heck to promote my work. There's more than just what's shoved to your face on X through the mainstream guys. I put in as much work as the next guy, I promise. I was just up until 5 a.m. this morning writing multiple articles. I had one on Leonard and CJ Johnson, CJ Gardner Johnson, that is, how they have a little bit different opinions on how things are going to start out. Leonard's a little apprehensive on them not having gelled as much on the field as he would have liked, and Gardner Johnson says it's not going to be a big deal. So I'm interested to see who's right on that and who's not. So I try to bring as much content as I can. I usually have about like 10 articles out a week between both things. And like I said, I package them all into the Bills Blizzard. I think people will enjoy it if they check it out. Like this past one, I got a little bit personal, given the situation with Ed Oliver and the unfortunate passing of his son. I have a daughter who is a similar age, so it really hit home with me.
Do.
So it really hit home with me, and so I got a little bit personal. And I know we talked about I got a little too sappy. I liked your saying we're all maple, so we all have sap. But I do try to get a little personal sometimes. You can't see it. Maybe you can bring it here. This is one of my good friends, Ryan, who was just like my brother. You see the Bills logo in the back. So just as much as football is in the forefront of everything, I wrote in my article that, family is the backbone of it all. So, when we're congregating with people or watching the game amongst each other every Sunday, that's really what matters, friends and family. As much as frustrated as we get with things that happen on the field, that's what matters the most. So I hope people go check that out. There's a lot of more photos like that of that guy in there and me growing up. And now that I've got the opportunity to cover the Bills, I've kind of dived in head first, and I just want people to at least give it a chance, because I do put a lot of work into my writing, and I think it's well worth people's time. And I'm just as passionate as the next person, and I just happen to write about it a lot. So,
well, I know I can't wait for your article that comes out 3 days before the Bills Super Bowl parade.
Oh boy, that would be great, wouldn't it?
Yes, and just as a reminder to everyone, we are going to have on the Ralph Rant coming up here the author of Collision Low Crossers, Nicholas Dawidoff, Nicky as he likes to be called, who spent the entire 2011 NFL season with the New York Jets. He was invited by general manager Mike Tannenbaum and, of course, head coach Rex Ryan.
Mm-hmm.
There's a definite Jim Leonard connection in there of immediate interest to Bills, but this is fascinating. You've got to go read the book.
I do. I do want to.
Yeah, you've got. I'm going to send it to you. I've got to send Del Reed. I'm going to send you one too. What the hell? And get Nikki to autograph a copy
Heck yeah.
of these. And this book was. It should have won, but the Literary Sports Award or Sports Literary Award, whatever it was, he was the second up for winning that, and he also actually was a runner-up for the Pulitzer Prize on. And Nick's an awesome writer, and he's an awesome guy. I tell him today, actually, that it might be 90 minutes that I get him on for, and he tells me I might need to supply him with beef on wick to get him through it.
There you go. I like
To which, of course, I had to respond, well, what do you mean? What about the wings?
Yeah. How about both?
And how about both, obviously. And my aim is, of course, to get the fabulous Del Reed, who is the co-founder of Bills Mafia, a autographed copy of Collision Low Crossers, and I will pull that off with Nick, who's just a great guy. He responded less than 24 hours from my email,
awesome,
asking him to come on the show, and he will be on, and we're really looking forward to it. He's got great insights on the NFL overall. He's got, in his book, there's something about where the Jets are saying, do it like this. We're not Buffalo. Of course, that was during the drought. So it's great, and I'm looking forward to having him on the show.
Yeah, definitely.
But definitely, we'll do that, and that is coming up on the Ralph Rant. We've been going here for over 3 hours, and what we're doing is a proving ground, because when I have a partner on this, and this guy, I believe, he doesn't know it yet, but he's going to become the color analyst on my game day calls of the Bills games that we will be doing from wherever you're watching it. I'll be watching it from YouTube TV, and we're going to bring you basically a Buffalo Bills radio call of the game with commentary. We're going to do a pregame before that, a postgame after that. You're going to be with us all day. You're going to have your toast and eggs and bacon in the morning, make the coffee strong. Then we're going to have the snacks during the game. We're going to call the game for you. We're going to get to the end of the game. Go ahead and get your after-game snacks. We'll be on with you for our post-game reactions, and we are going to give you production required to be a Buffalo Bills fan in this 2026 season in the brand new stadium with a brand new coaching staff. And I am totally excited about it, and I'm sure you will be too. So I've just put out in the public forum, John, the request for you to be the color analyst of these games, and that might be quite interesting.
I'll see what I can do. I'm not sure if I can always make it happen, but if I can ever hop on, I would 100% do it. I just, like I said, I got that 2-year-old daughter, so I'm a little bit busy on the weekends, but whenever I could hop on one, I would definitely be interested in doing it with you for sure. Because I know,
as you all know, the Ralph is very insistent on what he wants. You guys have been with me for a year. I will get what I want and need, but we are going to do a radio call of these games so you can follow the game even if you're unable to see it. And of course, the Bills are very popular. There might be weeks where certainly they are not the prime game on a particular network, and you won't be able to see them. We will be there for you to give you the play-by-play in hopefully the closest format available to match up with the fabulous Van Miller, who used to do this for the Bills from 1960 to 2003. He actually broadcast in five different decades, or was it 6? Maybe it was 8. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, but that will be the situation with the games. We're 3 hours and 10 minutes into it. A lot of you guys are still with us. I think we need to get to a few more comments here.
Okay.
Because I'm sure many of them are actually going to add fun to the show by questioning my fine co-host here. And I'm trying to look for where I left off with them. Here's Fume Drummer. Hope Leonard's attack as savage as he did when he plays for the Bills. Attack, attack, attack. We actually saw that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, here we go. I think this is our next one.
Okay.
What do you think about Jamori Macklin taking the team or the practice squad? And I'll give my opinion first. I was really impressed with Jamori Macklin. No, he is not as fast as other receivers. But sometimes you just see something with a player. Maybe it was his name. His cousin is, of course, Jeremy Macklin,
Right.
who we know well in the NFL. And he just seemed to be in the right place in the right time for a couple of big catches against the Panthers. And I just feel something about this guy. And I think a lot of people will probably think that, well, he's a little slower or so forth. We've got Skylar Bell. We've got to talk about how many receivers we're going to keep. Is it going to be 5 or 6 perhaps? And what are we talking about, John, for our receivers? We've got, of course, DJ Moore. I think Josh Palmer. I don't know. We haven't seen a roster that puts one above the other, but Josh Palmer, Keon Coleman, certainly.
Khalil,
Skylar
Bell.
Obviously. Skylar.
Yeah, and then it'll come down to probably, Trent Sherfield or Mecole Hardman Jr. Or I honestly, personally do not think that Macklin will make it. I know he's flash. I think he's more of a prime practice squad candidate. But I guess you could mix it, lump him in there as well. But I think that last spot probably comes down to those type of players. Maybe Steven Gosnell can surprise. I doubt it, but he's been a pretty good player this offseason. So
he's been a camp darling for a couple of seasons.
So
sure.
I think that he might get a practice squad spot as well. So maybe like it's him and Macklin on the practice squad. But Sherfield coming out with 4 catches against the Browns was a little bit surprising for me. I don't know if it was just because he was given an extra little bit of opportunity because some of the other guys were banged up, like Dante Pettis, who actually has also had a good offseason as well. Mecole Hardman had a couple of drops, as of late, especially against the Browns, but he has been in competition for that punt returner job with Ray Davis. So it'll be interesting. I do think they're gonna keep 6.
We talked about this earlier in the show, and I have to ask you about it, which is my sort of thing about manufacturing a couple of roster spots. And I first wanted to get your opinion. It's going to be a 2-part thing. First, on the fact that Ray Davis has fielded most of the punts. We saw, of course, Hardman out for, I think, 1 versus the
I think
Browns.
He's done maybe 1 or 2. Yeah, he might have did 1 against the Panthers too. I can't remember for sure.
Yes, exactly.
Yes,
but the Bills were definitely trying to determine if they have a kick and punt returner where Mecole Hardman doesn't occupy a roster spot because he might well be the 6th receiver the Bills are looking at from what we talked about just before. And then secondly, the Ben Sumarin, and I've heard from the Bills that I heard from both Joe Brady and Pete Carmichael Jr. that the notion of a fullback on the Bills squad isn't necessarily a given. Brady was quite clear in saying we're going to feed them from the fire hose when we get into camp, and we'll see what happens. Obviously, one of the 2, Jackson Acker, was released already. And Ben Van Sumeren was actually not out in an offensive capacity for the Bills.
I didn't get the
last
rewatch.
weekend. He was a special teams player.
Yeah.
But Shane Zylstra was out. Number 48 is a tight end
Yep.
And I contend that
He's been
perhaps
pretty
the Bills are
a
thinking,
surprise.
yeah, but I contend actually the Bills are thinking that a big people setup, which Pete Carmichael admitted he likes,
Mm-hmm.
with Jackson Hawes in 13 personnel playing an H-back or even the role of a fullback, does that also save a roster spot over keeping a Ben Van Sumeren? And do we look at the Bills actually manufacturing a couple of roster spots like baseball teams in July or manufacturing a couple of runs or bases?
Yeah. I think that's definitely a good point. I think they would love it if Ray Davis could take on that punt returner job as well. I think he can do it. I think what he really needs to work on is just decision making as far as
Yes.
I think he's getting used to that as far as because we saw what he could do as a kickoff returner last year. He took one to the house. I believe it was against the Texans, if I'm not mistaken. So hopefully he can maybe do that again week one. But anyways, I think they would love it if he could take on both roles. And I think, honestly, Ray, for as explosive as he was in college, he just wants to get on the field. And he is a little bit of an older player, even though he's still on his rookie contract. So I think they need to squeeze out as much as they can from him. And I don't want to use that kind of term, but they need to be able to get as much as they can out of this rookie contract because he is a little bit of an older prospect. So it's not just as if he was like 20 or 21 coming into the league. I can't pin it down exactly, but I think he was like 22 or 23 at least. So he is a little bit of an older prospect, which is an interesting situation for a running back specifically, but he's explosive. He doesn't have a ton of tread on the tires still. So I think they just want to be able to use that explosiveness as well as they can, which if they can get that on punt return, then awesome. But I don't think they should force it. So I think they are kind of taking it down to this last game, maybe to see if someone pops one off or something. I'm not saying that should be the end-all be-all of the decision maker if someone made a play in this last preseason game, but it would show that, that maybe they are capable of doing it, whoever it is. So I am interested in that. And I know we definitely have differing opinions on Van Sumeren. It sticks in my mind. It was like the second offensive play against Carolina. Ben Van Sumeren was out there. He was out there, and he was out there with the starters. And that's, it just stuck in my mind. And
that could well be a real indicator, including the indicator of him not being an offensive participant in Cleveland.
Yeah.
And that might be exactly right, because we could take that inference like two completely opposite ways.
Yep.
And but I think it's probably a lot, and he seems like a dog, and I think that's the biggest
former linebacker too. So
yeah, it's the biggest. I think it's the biggest determinator of guys being on this roster or not. And then how much of a dog they are, because they want dogs.
Yeah, and you're talking about maybe not keeping 6 wide receivers. Well, then maybe you do keep the fullback just for special teams alone. I mean, he is a dog on special teams, and it's just he would have been probably still in Philly if it wasn't for his injury last year. So he's just kind of had some bad luck with his injury. He made the roster outright in Philadelphia, and that's not an easy roster to make.
Exactly.
He's a quality player. It's just he's kind of been had a little bit of a rough road, which a lot of these Bills players have as far as injuries go. So it just sticks in my head that he was out there blocking for James Cook. He was out there with Josh Allen in that first series against Carolina. And I know Reggie, for as much as they want to make the big deal about him in the offense, it was his special teams prowess is why he stuck around for so long.
That is right, and I think for that reason that I actually might be more of the mind to think that they are keeping him, and that's why you didn't see him offensively against Cleveland.
Yeah, he's one of the players that maybe you'll have to check it out, I guess, but he's one of those players that's on the verge of probably cracking the roster. And I'll just say I wrote about it. I haven't submitted it yet, but if he doesn't play, then that probably means that he's on the team. Or if he plays very little, that probably means he's on the team. But if he's out there a lot, then maybe not. So it'll be interesting to see because I'm sure they don't want him to get hurt like he unfortunately did week 1 last year. So I'm sure if he is in their plans, then they might take it a little bit easy with him. So we'll see.
I think that I'm tending to think it might be the case, and I'm tending to think that they're.
Did I sway your decision, or did I sway your thinking?
Well, slightly, because I think that might explain why they were so concerned with having Ray Davis being able to return both kickoffs and punts, because if he can, that opens up a spot, because the Bills don't necessarily need McCole Hardman other than that. And if that's the case, then you can keep the fullback. Mm-hmm. And that might be what the Bills are actually thinking, and that's precisely what I was thinking. You caught that.
And even you can stash a McCole Hardman on a practice squad as a veteran player on the practice squad. And if you need to call him up from time to time, you could do that.
Absolutely. And that's a possibility, because I think we'll also see, and I think they're going to use Ray Davis, because I think Pete Carmichael Jr. turns this Bills backfield into a pass-catching situation. We are going to actually see a running back screen situation with the Bills this season that we've not seen as much before. I mean, we've seen a lot of bubble screens. We saw a tunnel screen to McCole Hardman actually versus Cleveland, I think it was, or was it? I don't know which game it was.
Yeah, I think it was Cleveland, I believe, but I can't remember.
Yes,
he scored the touch. He scored the touchdown, right? I believe. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
But I think Pete Carmichael Jr. is one of his touch points is definitely involving the Bills' backfield in the receiving game. When you've got a quarterback like Josh Allen, who I think they're going to turn him truly this season into what he always should have been, which is not a technician, but an artist. And I think that Josh will have more layups available to him. I think those layups are going to be available via what the offensive backfield is doing. And based on that, I think Ray Davis could have a pretty huge year for the Buffalo Bills. I mean, almost compared to who was the kid with the Ravens? They had not Ravens, the Patriots. They had for so long. That was a great back. This was long ago, also. But I just see that kind of projection for Ray Davis. And Ray Davis is another one of these guys where you could just tell he's a dog. Yep. He is a dog. He's kind of the dog they want on this team.
Yeah, and I think it kind of from his background too. He's another guy. He's got a good background story of he kind of had to fight for everything that he had. He grew up in the foster system, and things, and then he was able to make his way out of that and attend a good college and make a name for himself. And he transferred a few times in college, ended up in Kentucky, and then ended up becoming a 4th-round draft pick. So I mean, he's definitely a great story. He's definitely got the right mentality, but like I said, the journey that he has taken, he is a little bit older I'd like to look up. I don't know exactly what his age is, but he is a little bit older of a player. So I think it'd be prudent for them to, get as much as they can before it's too late, because they did.
It sounds like that's the plan, definitely. So Doug Godson is in here with what you think about Jamori Macklin making the team or practice squad. And I think that I'm going to let you answer that, John, but I think primarily it devolves completely around the number of guys they're planning on keeping in that receiver room, if it's 5 or 6. And while I'm at it, speaking here, I see another text coming up here, and I want you to go ahead and put all your links into a chat while I'm yakking here so the guys can get all your stuff here. And
for some reason, it's not letting me do that, Ralph. I tried to do that, but it wouldn't let me for whatever reason.
In the chat, really?
Yeah, I can try again, but
it's not the private chat between us, right?
Nope, it's the other one, and it's not letting me do it for whatever reason, but I'm not sure why. I can give it. I can, if you want, I can like put it in our private chat if you want to put it in there, Ralph. I don't know.
We'll go ahead and do that, and then I could actually go ahead and actually put that into the chat myself here.
Okay. Yep. I'll do that.
But
And then, so
definitely,
as far as Macklin goes, I don't foresee him making the team, but who knows if he explodes again for another 100+ yard performance? You never know. I definitely do think he's a prime candidate for the practice squad. And hey, he's another fellow Kentucky player, just like Ray Davis. So that is a little bit interesting connection there. Maybe Ray Davis put a little bug in their ear during the pre-draft process or something. I know that he did that as far as for Deion Walker. He actually had an interview just the other day. He was saying he told Bean that he would put his whole rookie contract on Deion Walker before pre-draft. So I'm sure he might have been maybe in the ears of just, with the Kentucky. I know they didn't probably play together, but the Kentucky connection. He probably
the Kentucky connection.
Yep, probably. Exactly. I like that, right? So, and who knows? Stevie Johnson, another Bills great too. He was also for Kentucky. So,
talk that up, right?
Yes.
Jerry's Funhouse is in the house here for the real takes. You are getting them, Jerry. Thanks for joining us tonight. I am the Ralph. This is the Ralph Rant. And again, if you are new to the channel, amongst those who are in here tonight, go ahead and subscribe. We're going to be supplying you with content all season long. John will be joining me a great deal, and we are talking about actually having game days with live radio calls, actually radio style calls of the Bills games, and I'm going to be bringing those to you. We're going to have game clocks in there so you can sync up to the game, and if you're watching it on a particular source, we'll be a little bit behind so you can pause and catch up with it. Certainly you can't go forward, but that's the plan here, to bring you the Bills experience from the Ralph Rant, and we're going to be doing this in the sense of the same way the fabulous Van Miller once called the games, and we'll be looking forward to doing that here. I could just imagine one of them right now. Here's Josh. He in the shotgun. He gets a snap. There is a fake to James Cook, but no, he's got a man down there. He's throwing downfield from the right. He's rolling out to the right. It's to the 5-yard line, and it's caught for the score. So that's what you're going to get, that type of game call. If you can't see the game, of course, you can enjoy it that way. And if you can, you'll be hearing how we are interpreting the game. And I believe John here has got our stuff. Did you throw that in the private chat? I've got it here.
You got it? Yes. There's a few of them, but I tried to get all I could. Primarily, I am on
5 of them.
Mostly just, you can find me over at Bills on SI, John W. Green. All my articles can be found over there, as well as Believe in Buffalo over on Medium. It's a free, kind of like Substack, but it's not, obviously. So it's very similar, though, and it's free for anyone to sign up, even though it might prompt you for payment, which honestly, it's not bad. It's like $60 for a year, and you get not just my content, you get hundreds or thousands of writers' articles. So I do suggest, if you are a heavy reader, to maybe look into that. But I'm just asking for maybe a free follow over there, and you can get all of my articles emailed right to you from over there. And like I said, every Sunday I put the Bills Blizzard out. So I kind of try to connect my on SI writing with my Medium, so that way everyone can catch up at the end of the week. And I think it's a good thing for fans to look at during the week. So I'm hoping that they'll check it out.
Well, everybody, look forward to the home opener, and I'm actually going to try this. I might do it live tomorrow night with the game call with the Bills, because they are actually on NFL Network, and that will be the fact that I could see the Bills all 3 preseason games because NFL Network is carrying the game. Then, of course, we will get them all because we are on the NFL Sunday Ticket when we get into the season, and we will start off with the opener at Houston, where the Bills will go in and frighten C.J. Stroud in that game. I'm looking forward to that. We're going to give you that game call. And let me get a couple more of these here. I'm going to copy that one here.
Mm-hmm.
There we go.
Yeah, that one's a little probably.
And then go
difficult.
back into the chat. I think they're getting in there.
Oh, yeah, it looks like they are. Oh, maybe I lost him. I don't know. I guess I'll wait. See if I can get hold of him. I do not disagree with that Dub Godson. I do believe that DJ Moore might end up, well, I don't know if he's a totally better player, but I do believe that he can be better for this team in this particular situation. I think his mentality and the way he's approached this offseason has been a breath of fresh air for Josh Allen, and you can kind of see it. So I'm interested to see how it plays out in the regular season. But I do not know where the Ralph Rant went to. I kind of don't want to just stand here alone, but I also don't want to lose his live stream. So if you have any comments, throw them in there, and I guess I'll try to answer anything that you do. And again, follow me over at @jgreen_PR Sports, or over on Blue Sky. I think it's just John W. Green that you can look up, and it's at billsmafia.bluesky.social. Yeah. One second, folks.